with lack of turnout. In other words, yes, he won. And yes, he got 77 million votes or whatever, 80 million, whatever it was. If the Democrats had had a good turnout and then you add voter fraud to it, would President Trump have lost? If they'd had a really good candidate or a moderate candidate with a good turnout and then added fraud to it, would he have lost? But instead, with a bad candidate, horrible turnout, fraud couldn't do much. If that's the case, it's not to take anything away from President Trump. It's to say that I think the Republican Party better be doing a lot more work to draw more voters, right? Because the midterms are coming. And the question is, will enough people turn out with the Republican Party to overcome the fraud? Are they as motivated, or are the Democrats so angry now? You know, they got a dictator in the White House and all that garbage they say. Are they so angry and motivated that they're going to have a decent turnout, and with a decent turnout and fraud, Republicans lose the House and maybe the Senate, and then what? Let's talk about that and many other things with Dr. Doug Frank tonight. Then, let's talk to Annie Cyrus about several issues related to particularly gang rapes, sexual assaults by Muslim men in the UK, which I'm afraid is a bellwether for the US. Let's talk about that. Several things with Annie Cyrus tonight. Then I'm going to be joined by Alex Newman. Did you see what went down in the Oval Office today with the president of South Africa? You've got to see it. We'll play the video. President Trump, thank you again. Thank you again, President Trump. He has spoken the truth, and he has showed the people what's going on in South Africa, something I and Alex Newman have been talking about for years. And a lot of Americans are going tonight, what's going on in South Africa? Whoa, I didn't know that was going on. President Trump played a 4.5-minute video in the Oval Office today to the president of South Africa, who tried to deny there was any genocide going on of the white Christian farmers. You got to see this, Alex Newman. Then Senator Bob Hall of Texas, state senator, and David Tice. It looks like Greg Abbott. And you got to say the good when they do the good. You got to acknowledge it. Greg Abbott's about to sign a piece of legislation I think he helped Senator Bob Hall with to harden the grid of Texas, which is its own grid. Now, how can we learn from that in our other states when there are 3 grids in the country, Texas being its own? And then what about the gambling? It looked like there was a lot of maybe organized crime, maybe cartels involved in the lottery in Texas. What's going on with that? And again, can that be a model for us to get rid of our corrupt lotteries in our states? That's tonight. So we've got Alex Newman, then Doug Frank, and then Annie Cyrus, and then State Senator Bob Hall and David Tice. All right. Before we get to all that, look at this. I got to do a little tease. Here is President Trump today in the Oval Office going after one of the NBC reporters. You got to love this. Watch this.
God announced it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One.
What are you talking about? What are you to get out of here. What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. This NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which is a very nice thing. They also gave $5.1 trillion worth of investment in addition to the jet. Go back, you ought to go back to your studio at NBC, because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace. No more questions from you. Go ahead. Go ahead, talk about that. His name is Peter something. He's a terrible reporter. Quiet.
That's my question now.
You got to love that, right? Now, as you're about to see with Alex Newman here in just a second, they were just showing video of all these white farmers being killed and the leaders of South Africa calling for the genocide and the murder of white capitalist and oftentimes Christian farmers. And NBC's worried about the stupid jet. He had a little bit more to say about that reporter. Here we go.
To talk about it, and I didn't know we'd get involved here, but I will say this, that if the news wasn't fake like NBC, which is fake news, totally, one of the worst, ABC, NBC, CBS, horrible, but if they weren't fake news like this jerk that we have here, if we had real reporters, they'd be covering it, but...
If you had real reporters, unlike that jerk we have here, he says, they'd be covering it. And that's right, we're real reporters, and we've been covering it. And we've been covering it. If you go to worldviewtube.com, type in South Africa, you'll see this reporter, this talk show host, and I wear a lot of hats, news reporter, talk show host, sometimes Bible teacher on Sunday nights or during the day on my 1 o'clock show on 74 Christian stations. But yeah, this talk show host, this reporter, this news guy has been talking about it for a long time because we aren't fake news, we're real. So thank you, President Trump, for pointing out the fake news doesn't want you to know about this, which is why they just try to distract with the plane over what just went down in the Oval Office that you're about to see in its totality today. Now, I also have to give a shout out to my buddy, Dr. Peter McCullough, who testified today before a committee. I think it was a Senate committee. Listen to this.
It was abundantly obvious the COVID-19 vaccines did not reduce the risk of death. I don't want America to be fooled by this hearing today, thinking that the vaccines save lives, because they didn't.
The vaccines did not save lives. I think that's our buddy Nick Helsher sitting right next to him as well. We'll try to catch up with one or both of those guys tomorrow. No, I don't know that was Nick, but I think Nick was testifying. We'll find out. I'll find out and have one of them on. Here's another one by McCullough.
Now, the topic today is myocarditis, or heart damage from the COVID-19 vaccines. I'm a cardiologist. I know the topic well. I've examined thousands of patients with this problem. Thousands. Before the pandemic, I had 2 patients ever with this problem. There's 1,065 papers in the peer-reviewed literature on COVID vaccine myocarditis. So let me summarize them for you. The first one that came on my radar screen that was alarming came from Washington University in St. Louis, August 18th of 2021. The first author is Verma and colleagues. New England Journal of Medicine. 42-year-old man comes into Washington University Hospital with vaccine myocarditis. The infection's ruled out. It's the vaccine. He's in the hospital. This is one of our best hospitals in the United States. He dies 3 days after taking Moderna. They can't save him in the hospital.
Say, Dr. McCullough, move the microphone just a little bit away from you.
Then one was reported from Korea by Choi and colleagues. This is now a younger man. Just a few days after Pfizer, he comes in the hospital. He dies within 8 hours of being in the hospital. I can tell you, I'm a cardiologist. That doesn't even happen with heart attacks. He dies within 8 hours. I examined all of the slides and the images that the Koreans had showed us. It looked like somebody took a blowtorch to that heart. It was so completely fried with inflammation. His heart was destroyed. These cases, which were widely known at the time, should have gotten everyone's attention. Everyone should have been laser focused on this. We should never have someone die after taking a vaccine that's directly caused to the vaccine. Then Gill and colleagues, Connecticut, published in Archives of Pathology, 2 boys, age 16 and 17, who die a few days after taking Pfizer. These are teenagers. They're found dead at home by their parents. They're absolutely horrified. They request an autopsy. They call in University of Michigan and University of Minnesota to look over what are they finding at autopsy. Conclusion, it's Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine myocarditis, unequivocal. These are autopsy-confirmed cases. So for all the mothers in the room, how would they feel if they found their children dead after taking a COVID-19 vaccine? This is in the peer-reviewed literature. This is not misinformation. Everyone should be paying attention to this. This is not conjecture. This is in the peer-reviewed literature. So we start to ask ourselves, what is going on?
Wow. We're going to get to more of that tomorrow night. Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Peter McCullough. But if you go over to worldviewreport.com, worldviewreport.com, guess what, folks? We have, as I reported in the Worldview Report tonight,
government has become.
we have the pandemic.
Right.
This
is a feeder, just like what.
Pull that audio down. Sorry, guys. We have the pandemic treaty being passed by the WHO. WHO pandemic treaty. Got it somewhere in here, but it's on a report today. I put it in the Worldview Report tonight. So clearly they're planning for another pandemic of some kind, right? They are. All right, we got a lot to get to. Melissa did bring me my green drink. I drink it every day. It's my Gatatana. I put half a scoop on Dolly's food every morning. Go to melissahousegpa.com. melissahousegpa.com. One scoop, the equivalent of 90 billion plant cells. I take it every day. You know why. You know about the man that was eating it that had a terminal cancer, and Tom Harper, and he started eating the paste, lived another 10 years. They'd given him just a few weeks to live, went on to live another 10 years. I'm not making claims, I'm just telling you the facts. From that, Dave Hunter started Global Plankton Alliance, and this has now got 5 clinical trials behind it. It goes right to the cellular level. And yes, it's great for your pets, which is exactly why my beloved Dolly gets a half a scoop on her food every morning, because we're trying to make you live a long time. Oh, don't, not in the mouth. Thank you, though. You can lick my ear. Because we're trying to make you live a long time, right? That's right. So there you go. I give a half a scoop to her every day on her food, and I drink a full cup every night. Right here, most of the times you see it right live on TV. I take my Bella Grace, I take my Numi, I take my Galatana. Hey, Dolly, you cannot have my gumdrops over there. Not gumdrops, what do you call them? Throat lozenges. You can't have those. You wouldn't like them anyway. Ooh. You know what that is. You smell it every day on your food, don't you? Hey, I think I just spilled some, though. Did you have your pumpkin today? Did you? Did you get some banana? Between your pumpkin and your Gatatana, and you get some probiotics in your yogurt, this dog, we're going to try to get this dog to live a long time, aren't we, girl? So anyway, get it for yourself. Get it for your pets. It's the real deal. MelissaHouseGPA.com. MelissaHouseGPA.com. Subscriptions spiked the middle of February, and they're going up. They're still going up. The word is getting out about the power of this product, Gatatana. MelissaHouseGPA.com, a great way to support us and your health. Get it today, please. Joining me now is Alex Newman. Alex lived in South Africa. Alex and I, for several years, both together and independently, have been warning about what's going on in South Africa. Last week, I think it was, I played a segment of my documentary, Sabotage. We have a whole segment on what was going on and is going on in South Africa as they murder the white farmers, Christian farmers. But not just that, the black communist killing the black South African who won't go along. Even Ronald Reagan was warning about that. Black communists killing the black bus driver, the black taxi driver, the black teacher, the black police officer who refused to go along. But the media wants to tell you, oh, it's all apartheid, the racist whites against the blacks. No, what they don't tell, was some of that going on? Sure. But they don't tell you what was really going on. The weaponization of race, number one. But the communists killing the black South African who didn't want to go along. They didn't tell you that many of the communists, black communists, were killing white farmers whose families were there hundreds of years before the black communist, or that they're being killed not only because they're farmers with private land and they're capitalist, which the communists hate the capitalist, but they're being killed also equally, or maybe even more so, because they're Christians. Even denoting their Christianity, the communists would, by putting a Bible on their dead bodies. And they would film this. Well, the pictures and the videos are out there. I don't suggest you go look. Women raped for hours. Men tortured for hours. And the media in America has largely been silent. I don't know who informed President Trump about this or when he was informed about it. But today, he confronted the president of South Africa in the Oval Office, who apparently wanted to tell him there was no genocide going on. And in true Trump fashion, he set him up, or I should say, the president of South Africa set himself up. And in rolls a gigantic flat screen TV into the Oval Office. The video's played. You're going to see it now. Joining me now first is Alex Newman. Alex, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me, Brandon.
I rejoiced in what I saw today. You know, there's things that President Trump does sometimes I don't agree with. I have question marks about. And then he goes and he does something like this today, and I think, how glorious, right? But we warned our audience up front. There are going to be things we agree with, things we don't agree with, and we're going to call them like we see them. And this is one of those days where Trump is being Trump. And I will tell you, I'm sure you've met him, and we spent 11.5 hours at Mar-a-Lago overseeing filming and production around him and watching him interact with not only myself, but with my wife, my daughter, my son. I saw a man, a father, a grandfather. I think Donald Trump is one of these guys who worked very hard to get where he's at. But I think he's also a guy that knows he came that close to losing it all. And by maybe you could say the grace of his bankers, or maybe the equal position the bankers found him in, they all realized we better hang together and try to make this work out to our own ends together. But for whatever reason, I think Donald Trump knows a little bit about the human experience from his own life to have been with some sensitivity and compassion. I don't know if it's working around housekeepers, cleaners in his buildings, in his hotels, cooks, chefs, watching people work hard, construction workers. You know, he's been around enough people to see them working and coming up and knowing that their hard work also benefits him and vice versa. That, I don't know, there's something very human about Donald Trump. I've seen it personally, just the way he interacted with my kids, picking up on their names when I would call their name. Logan, can you do this? And then he would hear, Logan, hey, Logan, get my phone. I want a picture of this. There's something about Donald Trump that causes him in a way that maybe shocks people, that he identifies with people who are being treated in a way that's not just. What do you say before we go to further discussion on this?
I think you're absolutely right, Brandon. He does seem to be a very genuine individual. Like you, I've had some differences of opinion on policy matters. But the fact that he's calling this out, I don't think people understand how big this is. This isn't just something going on another continent that doesn't concern us. As I've explained for well over a decade now, what is happening to the Afrikaners, what Trump has just highlighted today in the Oval Office, is actually a sneak preview of what they want to do to us as American Christians. It is actually a critical part of the globalist deep state agenda, the communist agenda. Take what happened to the Afrikaners in South Africa, expand that to the global level, right? So instead of a racist, communist South African government, you're talking about a racist, communist, global governance system under the United Abominations or some similar entity. And you get a really clear picture of where they're going. Expropriation without compensation, right? We're just going to steal your stuff. We don't like you? Well, then we're going to murder you and leave a Bible on your dead, mutilated body. You complain about it, we're going to call you a racist, a hate, or whatever. This is what they plan for all of us, right? Barack Obama, I mean, you can't understand Barack Obama without understanding what's happening in South Africa. I did a a chapter for a really important book about Obama on this exact subject. Obama says that he got his start in politics as a result of his interest in what was happening in South Africa. He and Nelson Mandela were like two peas in a pod. He actually collaborated with Nelson Mandela on some things. So you can't understand the global revolution that is taking place before our eyes, that I believe Donald Trump is trying sincerely to hit the brakes on. You cannot understand it without understanding what's happening in South Africa. And for at least 15 years that I've been exposed, I used to live in South Africa, but for the 15 years that I've been trying to expose this, I've been called every name in the book by the dishonest, lying, fake media. I've been called a liar. I've been called all kinds of nasty terms. And now all of the fake media that has been denying this effort to exterminate these people, all the fake media that has been trying to cover this up, trying to demonize the people who draw attention to it, is left with egg all over its face. And there will be no way to repair that credibility. What happened today is forever. Almost the entire world at some point will hear about this, right? Everybody connected to the internet. This is the top news story right now. There's no way to put that toothpaste back in the tube. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for Donald Trump that he was willing to risk the attacks, risk the smears from the fake media to protect this very embattled, very, very wonderful group of people known as the Afrikaners, who are being targeted quite literally for extermination.
Indeed. Indeed. Let's go to the Oval Office. It's a little lengthy, but I think it's worth playing and then getting your comment. This is what took place in the Oval Office today with the president of South Africa sitting there. Here we go.
To be convinced that there's no white genocide in South Africa.
Well, I can answer that for the president. It's, for him. No, seriously.
I'd rather have him answer.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that. It will be,
Our president will respond to you.
yeah, let me,
Thank you, Mr. President.
it will take President Trump listening to the voices of South Africans, some of whom are his good friends, like those who are here. When we have talks between us on the quiet table, it will take President Trump to listen to them. I'm not going to be repeating what I've been saying. I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. So it'll take him, President Trump, listening to their stories, to their perspective. That is the answer to your question.
But, Mr. President, I must say that we have, wait. We have thousands of stories talking about it. Sure. And we have documentaries, we have news stories, and that, is Natalie here, somebody here to turn that? I could show you a couple of things, and it has to be responded to.
Yeah, sure.
Let me see the articles, please, if you would, and turn the lights down. Turn the lights down and just put this on. It's right behind you. Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. South Africa occupy land. That's who we are. Can we drop my membership from this useless parliament? Yes, honorable member. Must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there so that, this is incredible. But I want you to understand what it is they're watching, okay? The White House has put this up on their website, okay? This is what the White House put up. This is what they were just watching. I want to go back to some of the body language, but I want you to see, to get the full context of what the president of South Africa, if there was white genocide going on, these three men would tell you. They would tell you. You've got to hear their stories. President Trump you saw him try to say something to Trump. Trump basically said, be quiet.
Yeah. And let me give a little bit of more context here, Brandon, because Ramaphosa, the dishonest communist leader of South Africa, tried to minimize that. Oh, that's just a fringe minority party. Total baloney. And first of all, that individual that we just heard, there were several individuals in the broader video. I don't think we got to all of them. But that individual in particular, his name is Julius Malema. He was the leader of the ANC Youth League up until fairly recently. That's him right there, Julius Malema. He is famous for calling for the extermination of white people, the murder of Afrikaner farmers. I mean, that's his call to action. He's a well-known communist. He believes in stealing everything from everyone. He's uber wealthy. Of course, communism always makes the leaders uber wealthy. And so he's not just some fringe leader, right? He was the leader of the Youth League of the ruling party, which has ruled South Africa for decades in a coalition with the South African Communist Party. After he left the ANC, he formed his own political party, and Ramaphosa acted like it's just some fringe little crazy group. Absolutely not. It is one of the largest political parties in South Africa. It's called the Economic Freedom Fighters. They work very, very closely with the government. One of the functions that they have is to expand the Overton window, right? So suddenly the murderous ANC looks moderate next to this Looney Tunes who's openly calling for slitting the throat of white people and stealing their farms and murdering their babies. So this is not some fringe cuckoo character on the South African political stage. This is one of the key political leaders of that nation. And in that video that Donald Trump showed, I actually watched the whole thing that he showed at the White House today. He also showed a video, and Ramaphosa did not address this, of Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma was the leader of the ANC until not that long ago. He was also the president of the Republic of South Africa. And he's standing up there on stage with huge numbers of troops in front of him singing, "Bring me my machine gun. We're gonna shoot all the Boers. My cabinet, we're all gonna shoot the Boers." I mean, this is what the president of the country, the sitting president of the country, was singing.
The Boers are the white farmers.
Precisely. Boer is the Dutch and the Afrikaans word for farmer, but Boers is also an identifiable people group. It's a subset of the Afrikaner community that moved inland, settled on these very significant farms. The most productive farmers in the world, by the way, like their ancestors back in the Netherlands. And their story is incredible, right? After they settled on the Western Cape, they started moving into South Africa. They tried to do a favor for the Zulu king, one of the Zulu kings, in exchange for a piece of land. That Zulu king actually waited until he got his cows back. That was the deal with these Boers. And once he got his cows back, he impaled the leaders of the Afrikaner Boer Party. So they allied with another Zulu king, eventually and went to war with him. But the story is incredible. When this crazy Zulu king sent his impi warriors after the Afrikaners, they circled the wagons, so to speak. About 400 or 500 of them took on an army of about 20,000 Zulu warriors. They prayed to God that he would protect them. He did, and that was the Battle of Blood River on December 16th. And that is one of the things that formed their identity. But so these Boers created two independent republics in the interior of southern Africa, the Orange Free State and the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic, the ZAR as it was called. And these were very prosperous, Christian-free nations until the British figured out that there was nice minerals under their feet, and that's when they started stirring up trouble. They eventually sent 500,000 men down there to exterminate these little republics, to bring them under the control of the British Empire. And kind of that's the really interesting history, right? The Afrikaners, the Boers, are very much like Americans in every sense. Where our histories diverged is that when the British tried to get rid of them, they lost, right? They put their women and their children in concentration camps, exterminated as many of their people as they could, set their farms on fire, salted the earth, whereas when we went to war with the British, we won. So that's how our histories diverged. But the Boers, the Afrikaners, these people are just like Americans in almost every way, except they speak Afrikaans instead of English. They actually call us the Amerikaners, right? They're the Afrikaners because they went to Africa. We're the Amerikaners because we came to America. But our histories are deeply intertwined. These people are just like a farmer in Iowa or Kansas or Nebraska. I mean, salt of the earth Christian people. And the fact that the nation's political leaders will go on stage and sing about exterminating them, and the fake media in America will say, "Nothing to see here, you're a racist if you say something," shows you everything you need to know about the dishonesty of our politicians, our fake media, and of course the communist regime in South Africa.
Amazing history. Excellent job. Excellent job, Alex. So look, I want you to see what President Trump played. Again, you saw them sitting in the chairs and you're hearing it. It's on a TV, but I don't know if the camera was ever going to pan over or not. But this is what they're watching.
There's nothing you can do. There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land.
Yes.
South African occupy land. That's who we are.
Honorable
Do whatever
member,
you want to
Deputy
do.
Speaker,
You can
Deputy
withdraw my
Speaker,
membership from
Deputy
this
Speaker.
useless parliament.
Honorable. Yes, honorable member.
Must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act.
Shoot to kill. Nyamaza. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa. Pa. Brr, pa. Pa. To kill. Nyamaza. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer.
The mayor of DA in PE is a white man. So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have touched a white man. Not because Mashaba and Soli will not be touched. They will be touched, don't worry. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness.
Shoot to kill. Nyamaza. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa. Pa. Brr, pa. Shoot to kill. Nyamaza. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa. Pa.
I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm saying to you, we have not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd understand somebody watching that, especially as it gets shared on Twitter, they freak out. It sounds like a genocidal call.
Cry babies.
Uzochuchulwa uliphuno sizokushaya uzobaleka tu sizobadula bazobaleka tu sizobadula bazobaleka tu.
We will expropriate land without compensation, whether they like it or not. If they object, they can seek refuge in America.
Wow. And that's what was shown in the Oval Office today. Now, I want to go real quick and let's just scan through this. I'm not going to sit through it all again. Let's just go and show the body language here as we roll through. I don't, you know, he's going to let him sit there and watch all that. Yep. Yep. Let's go to the end. Wow. That guy's got to be so uncomfortable.
Sweating bullets.
This is right now where you can hear the helicopter in the background. So they're flying over, showing those crosses. That's why there's no talking. And wow, that had to be about 4.5 minutes of him, like you said, sweating bullets.
And I'm so glad that he did this. And what Trump showed in the White House, just to be clear, is the tip of the iceberg. I mean, that is just a fraction of what's out there showing this. He didn't show, thankfully, I don't think people could handle it, the pictures, some of which you described earlier, Brandon, of the murders that we're talking about here. These things are so gruesome, you can't even begin to contemplate it. As I was watching Julius Malema there singing these songs, he almost looks like he's possessed by demons. I mean, what could possess a person to behave in that manner, to talk about their fellow human beings in that manner, to celebrate the extermination of women and children? It's got to be demonic. And I would encourage people who are new to this subject to go back and look at the work that we've done, that Brandon has done. My colleague William Jasper at the New American started warning that this was going to happen way back in the late 1980s. I picked up the trail with a cover story in 2012 for the New American called "Genocide and Communism Threatens South Africa." And you know, I had left from there by the time 2005 came around. It was already getting bad, but not like it is today. But in 2012, when I got a report from Genocide Watch where the leader had done a fact-finding mission down there, by the way, this is an anti-apartheid activist, right? Dr. Gregory Stanton. Nobody can accuse him of being sympathetic to apartheid or anything like that. He helped bring that regime down. When he went down for a fact-finding mission and concluded that the Afrikaners were at stage 6 of 8 on the genocide scale, 6 being planning and preparation, 7 being the actual extermination process, 8 being denial after the fact, I said, I've got to do something on this. So I started digging. What he concluded, actually, in his final report, which is still available online, is that there was direct evidence of South African government incitement and complicity in this process. And if you look at how South Africa has evolved, the communists always had a 2-part strategy here, and that's what people don't understand. Because Mandela didn't exterminate the Afrikaners, everybody says, oh, it's just a wonderful rainbow democracy. Total baloney. The revolution was always a 2-phase revolution. The first phase was the National Democratic Revolution, where we moved to democracy. The second phase of the revolution, which began a few years ago, ANC admitted this, is the phase where you actually start stealing everything from everybody and getting rid of your enemies by any means necessary. That's what we're entering into right now. The ANC made clear in 2015 that the guiding lodestar of their struggle was the mass murdering CCP regime that has enslaved mainland China. And so people need to know this stuff. Again, what's happening in South Africa is the template that they're planning for us. So I would encourage people to go read those articles I did in the New American, starting with that Genocide and Communism Threatens South Africa. There was a companion article to that I highly recommend. It was called South African Communists' Friends in High Places. And what I showed was it wasn't just the Soviet Union and the UN that brought these monsters to power. It was subversives within the highest echelons of power in the United States, including foreign relations, including David Rockefeller, including the whole crew of usual suspects. We have to understand that. And then if you want to understand where Obama comes in, if you go to my website at libertysentinel.org, I did an article not that long ago. I would really encourage people to check it out. You can find it on my Twitter account as well. And it's about you can't understand Obama without understanding South Africa's communist solution. That'll give you all the details of how and where Obama intersects with this and how that applies to the United States of America. This stuff is deadly serious, folks. And again, this isn't something that you can afford to ignore because it's what they're planning for you and your children as well.
Yeah, there they are. That's exactly what they're planning. And I would say now add in the Islamist with the Marxists, the red-green axis, and Americans, I don't think, understand what's coming. And I've tried to convey to this audience the need to prepare. Because if the Lord doesn't return for us soon, depending on what people's eschatology is, I believe that we are going to likely find ourselves right back where we were with Joe Biden. I'm very concerned about the midterms and what's going to happen after that. But I believe we could very easily find ourselves right back where we were, which is why I'm urging my audience to prepare physically and spiritually. Today on my radio show, I was talking about Revelation 15 and the praise that's being given in Revelation 15 by the martyred saints who've come out of the tribulation. And it gives the text of what they were singing before the throne of God in heaven, before the 7 bowl judgments are poured out, starting in Revelation 16. And I highlighted what it was they're singing about. God's majesty, his character, his deeds. And I contrast that to much of the modern music in the modern church today, which is not preparing warriors for Christ. It's not preparing people to be martyred. It's created a generation of feminized men, worship songs based on feelings, what I want God to do for me versus what he's done for us. And they're not the songs that people in China and the persecuted underground church could sing. It would have no, it would be antithetical, to what they've gone through, what they're going through. And I think that's part of the cultural Marxist agenda, is to make most masculine men so uncomfortable in the average so-called Church of America that it drives them away, because they don't want those masculine men around any more than they want those kind of men involved in leadership anywhere in the country. But the point I'm making is I'm urging my audience, Alex, and I want your comment, that while we're blessed with this little reprieve, I think that's all it is. I think when you add in the Marxist with the Islamist, what's probably coming to America is going to shock the conscience if the Lord doesn't call the church home. What say you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right to call people to get ready. Proverbs actually tells us that the wise man sees danger coming and prepares himself, right? The fool ends up in big trouble. Now would be a really good time. I'm very grateful for this little reprieve that we seem to be having. But folks, how much of this stuff is getting enshrined into law? Are you paying attention outside of your little social media ghetto to the anger and resentment and hatred and rage that's being stirred up among the leftists, among the Democrats, who are actually preparing for civil war, sometimes by their own admission? The reason they brought all these jihadists into the country, the reason they brought all these CCP special operators from the People's Liberation Army is because they're eventually planning to take down this country. And the reality is, Brandon, as you know, that this has been the norm for Christians for most of church history. I just got back from India just a few weeks ago, and while I was there, senior leaders of the ruling party were talking about we should make it a capital offense for Christians to proselytize and convert Hindus and pagans to the Lord. This is normal in most of the world, and we've had this little oasis of kind of Christian safety in America that we're not used to it, we're not prepared for it, and a lot of Christians, I think, are going to fall away if and when hard times come because they haven't been prepared spiritually and physically. They haven't been warned by their pastors, by their church leaders, by the TV personalities that they follow, that sometimes Christians are called to suffer. In fact, Jesus explained in the New Testament that all those who live righteously in Christ Jesus shall be persecuted. So we would be very foolish not to take advantage of this little bit of time. And by that, I don't mean to say let's not get involved and let's try to make some of these changes permanent. Let's try to fix these things. Absolutely, we should do that. But you hope for the best, you pray for the best, and you prepare for the worst, always understanding that our hope is not in politics, our hope is not in Trump, our hope is in Christ.
Amen to that. Tell people where they can get a hold of you at libertysentinel.org, I'm assuming.
Yes, libertysentinel.org, that's the easiest place. You can sign up for my newsletter for free. We broadcast the Sentinel Report all over, including on Worldview 2, so people can catch us there every week. Also, thenewamerican.com is a good place, and I am on Twitter, @AlexNewman_JOU. For those of you who want to pull your children out of the indoctrination camps and get them a real education, I'm now also working as a fellow with Classical Conversations. They've got 135,000 students across the country, communities everywhere. So if you want a Christian homeschooling program that you can get involved with, that's a great one. And thank you, Brandon. It's always an honor and a pleasure to come on the show to talk about these really, really critical issues.
Oh, as always, the honor's ours. Alex Newman checking in. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
LibertySentinel.org, folks. All right, before we go to Dr. Doug Frank with a long overdue interview with him, I guarantee he's going to have some great stuff to talk to us about based on my texting back and forth with him. But before we get to that, then we still got Annie Cyrus and Senator Bob Hall and he'll be joined by David Tice. Before we do that, remember, I take this every day. Bella Grace. Remember a guy emailed last week? His wife had leg pain for 10 years. The doctors couldn't figure out why. He emailed us. I printed it out, showed it to Melissa and a few others. This is very common. He said after a week on Bella Grace, the pain ended she'd been struggling with in her leg for 10 years. So there you go. Everybody has something different. Me, it was cracked hands. Bad psoriasis, cracked hands, probably from a leaky gut. There's collagen in Bella Grace, which you're lining your gut's collagen, they tell me. So once I got my leaky gut problem under control, my hands quit cracking and bleeding really badly. I got the pictures, I've shown you. My hair growth has just been absolutely amazing. Haven't had a Pepsid since December of 2023. Not everybody's got the same problem. But the great thing about Bella Grace is it seems to go, as Dr. Mark Miller said, right where your problems are. So again, you don't have to take my word for it. Why don't you try it for 30 days? Try it for 30 days. And if it doesn't do anything for you, quit taking it. But you're probably going to find out what everyone else is taking it. And we got a lot of you that have a subscription. You're probably going to find out for you, it goes to some of the areas of need that you have, like I have. There are 80 clinical trials behind it, folks. Just go to melissahousebg.com, melissahousebg.com. Some of you are becoming ambassadors, meaning you're also, well, you're doing what I'm doing. You're representing this great product to people. And when they sign up, a percentage of each purchase comes back to you. And it comes back to us to keep us going. So some of you are becoming ambassadors. And in this economy, it's always great to make an extra few $100s or several $100s a month, right? So consider joining our team in doing that. Otherwise, just go and get a subscription to the Elixir. Check out the 80 clinical trials. They also have the skincare. Melissa loves the skincare. After trying various skincare regimens, I guess, this is by far the best. I've noticed a reduction in fine wrinkles and love how it keeps my skin deeply moisturized throughout the day, which helps combat aging. My very dry skin feels transformed, and the difference is clear, especially when I stopped using it briefly and saw the results fade. Now that I'm back to it, my makeup applies much more evenly thanks to how hydrated my skin feels. So there you go. She loves the skincare. Then you can do the Bella Trim. It's an all-natural, plant-based weight management product. Studies also show it's great for cardiac health. Then there's the restorative sleep gummies to help you get to sleep and stay asleep. All of them at melissahousebg.com. Okay? Now, I also real quickly want to make sure you go to worldviewtalk.com because we're highlighting something new here. Worldviewtalk.com. Now we got great deals on Starlink. We have a Starlink. We got a Starlink from Tina, from Worldview Talk. Get the Starlink Generation 3 with essential mounting hardware and 5,000 gigabyte high-speed internet plan, only $165 a month. You're saving $625. Okay? Some of you got RVs, or you travel, you do camping, but while you're out camping or maybe you got a cabin, some of you in Minnesota or Wisconsin, up north. And you can by the way, you can get Starlink that's portable. Just take it with you. You know that? Worldviewtalk.com. These beanies, the EMF beanies to block the electromagnetic fields, those are very popular. And then, of course, the solar generators. I have the Delta Echo 400. This is the Echo River 2 Pro. They have all kinds of models, okay? So you might want to call on this one so you're sure to get the right one that fits your needs. 1-866-738-3224, 1-866-738-3224. The bivvies, you can buy one, a pack of two, a pack of three, text through a bivvy. Use your cell phone to text, but it goes not from a cell tower, it goes from your phone to that bivvy to the satellite down to your family member that has one. Bulletproof backpacks. Right? Bulletproof backpacks. It's horrible that we live in a day and age where you'd have to talk about that. But if you're looking to, these are big. So if you had one on your back and were running, you'd be protecting some major organs. Or if someone had to grab one and put it on their chest, hold it up to their chest. You could even hold one of these up to your chest and be firing back if you are under attack. And at least you'd be protecting your whole chest from about your waist up to your neck. It'd actually be a shield. It's bulletproof. So check that out, worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com, or you can call 1-866-738-3224. These make great gifts, by the way. 1-866-738-3224. But I really want to highlight the fact they now have Starlink, and you can actually get one that's in a big black case, and it's portable, and have super fast internet. We have one, and we use it for traveling as well. 1-866-738-3224. Joining me now is Dr. Doug Frank. We haven't visited with him in a few months, and we got to texting the other night. He said something to me shockingly. He said, President Trump didn't win this last election. The Democrats lost the last election. I'm like, what? Are you serious? I think 77 million turned out for him, didn't they, or something like that? And then I asked him about the midterms. Are you worried about election fraud in the midterms and then the next presidential election? He joins us now. Dr. Frank, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Good to see you, Brandon.
You too, Dr. Doug.
Nice hearing your son's voice, too. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes. Where are you at tonight?
I'm in Shasta County, California.
Oh, wow.
We've got big stuff happening up here. I don't know if you maybe didn't hear, but Clint Curtis is the new registrar of voters there.
I did not hear that. Wow.
That's a big deal. I had something to do with that.
Now, Clint Curtis, is he the one that says he helped to rig the machines for the Democrats or something? Do I have that right?
In 2004 in Ohio, absolutely, that's him. And, he's spoken at several of the events that you and I have been at.
Right.
And he's been going around the country telling everybody about election fraud. And so Shasta wanted to hire Tina Peters to be their new ROV, but of course she's indisposed at present.
She is.
That'll end soon.
Now, and again, I don't want to attribute it to him correctly. Was he asked to use the computers to rig the election, or was he asked to rig it so that they could show the fraud? In other words, didn't he think he was doing it to show how the fraud could be done, not because he was for the fraud, right?
No, in 2004, he wrote the software that the Republican senator used to cheat the election in Ohio.
But did he know that, or was he trying to show them that it could be done, not knowing they would go and do it?
That's a fair question. And I think you're right. I think he showed that it could be done, and then later he testified before the Ohio House. You can see those videos.
I think
online.
This is it.
I think you're right. I think he's not owning up to actually doing the work.
Right. If I remember correctly, he's just like, I tried to show them it can be done, and then I think they took it and they actually did it. I'm like, wait a minute, that wasn't why I did that for you. It was to show you you need to protect the system, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what I remember him telling me when I interviewed him.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Yes.
Here's the video I think you're referring to, by the way.
Yes.
Mr. Curtis, would you please state your full name for the record?
My name is Clinton Eugene Curtis.
And where do you reside?
Tallahassee, Florida.
And what is your profession?
I'm a computer programmer.
Would you please speak into the microphone so the audience can hear your testimony?
I'm a computer programmer.
Mr. Curtis, are there programs that can be used to secretly fix elections?
Yes.
How do you know that to be the case?
Because in October of 2000, I wrote a prototype for Congressman Tom Feeney at the company I work for in Oviedo, Florida, that did just that.
And when you say did just that, it would rig an election?
It would flip the vote 51-49 to whoever you wanted it to go to and whichever race you wanted to win.
And would that program that you designed be something that elections officials that might be on county boards of elections could detect?
They'd never see it.
Would you answer that question once again?
They would never see it.
So how would such a program, a secret program that fixes the election, how could it be detected?
You would have to view it either in the source code, or you'd have to have a receipt and then count the hard paper against the actual vote total. Other than that, you won't see it.
All right, Mr. Curtis, if you had been asked, you or others with your professional expertise had been asked to design a protective program that would protect the Ohio elections from against such software to fix the election, could you have done so?
If we've been asked to make a program that can fix the election, sure, anybody can do it.
No, could you have designed a program or a procedure or a protocol that would have protected Ohio against this kind of rigging?
No, you have to look at the source code. You have to get probably programmers from both or all parties to look at the source code and determine if there's anything in there that shouldn't be there. I mean, it's a simple program. You're adding 1 to a person's total. It's 100 lines of code tops.
All right. Are you aware of whether there was any protective action in Ohio against this kind of vote rigging through software?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
You were not asked to assist in the development of any protective system. Is that correct?
No, I was not.
In Europe, have you reviewed at all the election results in Ohio?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Given the availability of such vote rigging software and the testimony that has been given under oath of substantial statistical anomalies and gross differences between exit polling data and the actual tabulated results, do you have an opinion whether or not the Ohio election, presidential election, was hacked?
Yes, I would say it was. I mean, if you have exit polling data that is significantly off from the vote, then it's probably hacked.
And your testimony is under oath?
Yes, sir.
And the testimony you've given is true?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Interesting. So that's Clint, right?
Yep.
And you're saying he is now what?
He is the person in charge of elections now in Shasta County, Northern California.
How did that?
They call them ROVs out here. You know, most people call them like the election clerk, but they call them the registrar of voters.
Was he elected or appointed?
Appointed by the Board of Supervisors because they fired the previous one.
So that's obviously a pretty conservative area.
Yes, Shasta County is very red.
And you've had a lot to do with this.
Well, I don't want to take any credit. It's all the
Why not?
have done.
If the credit's due, then take it. So you had a lot to do with this.
Well, I've been involved from the very beginning, yes.
Okay.
For several years now.
Yeah. Well,
it's an exciting county because in January of 2023, they voted out all their Dominion machines. It was a big deal.
Wow. Have you gotten your phone back from the FBI?
No.
Are you going to Mike Lindell's trial June 2nd?
I wasn't invited and I'm not testifying, so I don't know what. I know that it's a big deal and everybody's all upset about it on, in all the circles you and I've run in, we're all concerned about it.
Yeah, we absolutely.
I wish him the best. I've testified in a couple of his trials, and I testified in that arbitration about the $5 million prize after the cyber symposium. And
well, I set for a deposition for this trial. I've set for 3 depositions, I think, but I've
set for a few myself.
I've set for a deposition for this trial that's coming up June 2nd. So I don't know if they're going to use my testimony or not.
I also sat one for this one as well.
I bet you did. All right. So that's why you're out in California. Now, let's go to the President Trump's 2024 victory.
Yes.
Now, you said something to me that shocked me. You said that President Trump didn't win as much as the Democrats lost.
Right.
What do you mean by that? And can you prove that?
Yes. So I've got some graphs I can show you, but I'm going to hold off on that. Let me just give you the overall summary. I think that'll help you. Remember about a year ago when President Trump was launching his big campaign to run, the big part of his campaign, he came out and said, we're going to make the election too big to rig. And when that happened, a bunch of folks started calling me on my phone. Hey, Dr. Frank, this doesn't sound right. Why is he saying this? So you know me, I'm a numbers guy. I went to my hotel room and I sat down and I did the calculations. And I figured out that if you try to get more Republicans registered and then chase those ballots and harvest them during the election, the best you're going to be able to do, if you do a remarkable job, is you're going to be able to increase Trump's turnout versus 2020 to 2024. the best you'd be able to do is increase his turnout by 3%. And we're up against a huge cheat. The 2020 cheat was over 10 million ballots, easy. And so if you're going to get a measly 3% increase, you're not going to be able to compete against a 10 million ballot cheat. So I called Mike, and I said, Mike, you need to tell the president to stop saying this. We don't need to be out harvesting ballots. We need to be trying to fix election fraud. That's the real problem. Because, the best they're going to do is increase by 3%. And so I don't know if you remember, but then Trump shut up, didn't say that for like 4 months. But then as the Republican Party moved in, as the election approached, he picked up that message again and started talking about too big to rig. And people were all over the country trying to register people to vote and chasing those ballots. Well, in the end, and I can show you the graphs, guess how much Trump's turnout went up from 2020 to 2024?
How much?
3%. Exactly what I predicted. Okay. And there's a very easy way to understand that. I can show you the graphs, but the easy way to understand it is you're going after diminishing returns. Most Republicans are already registered. Most people that are going to vote Republican are already registered, and most people that are registered are going to vote who are Republicans. So you're going after a smaller and smaller fraction, and you're working harder and harder for it. It's not a productive strategy. I can show you I have lots of graphs I could show you, but I can show you how many people were actually registered. For example, in Pennsylvania, where TPUSA, Turning Point, had this big thing, and Scott Pressler was out there. Oh, yeah, we're going to save Pennsylvania. We're going to register all these people to vote. They registered fewer people to vote in 2024 than they did in 2020, substantially less. Why? Because you're after a smaller and smaller fraction of the population. The numbers just don't pan out. It's not a good strategy. But what do you hear the Republican Party saying nationally? Oh, we saved the country. We're going to do the same thing again next time. Bad plan. Because you worked extra hard and you got 3%. Next time you might only get 2% more. You're up against cheating, and a massive amount of cheating. And
so you're saying there was still massive cheating in this last election. Was it too big to rig?
Was not too big to rig.
So why did they not rig it?
Tons of cheating still in the election. We're different now than we were 4 years ago. We have teams all over the country right now exposing fraud all over the place. The difference is that in 2020 we had Biden and then plus a huge amount of cheating. In this election, you still had a huge amount of cheating, but the turnout dropped. The floor fell out from underneath the Democrats. Kamala is a dud. And I've got graphs I can show you state by state that the turnout went down in nearly every state in America dramatically for the Democrat Party. So really the reason why Trump won isn't because they were out there harvesting. They barely increased his turnout at all. What happened is the bottom fell out from underneath the Democrats. It's a huge loss. I mean, in California alone, Kamala lost 3.5 million ballots compared to Biden in 2020, and she dropped all over the country. It's shocking.
So you're saying if they put up a halfway decent candidate in 3 years, then and then you add the cheating, they win the White House.
Then it's over. And that's and I can show you. I mean, and I've got long explanations of this on my YouTube channel. Where I show all the graphs and show you the drop in every state and do a comparison, and I can show you the trend is really, really bad across the nation. I mean, the only reason Trump won is because he was able to hold his own. I mean, MAGA is awake across the country, and then he was able to hold that and maybe increase just a little bit. But the real reason why he survived was because the Democrats put up a dud.
Does he know that? I think it was a miracle. In his heart of hearts, does he know this?
I haven't told him face to face, but I've been telling everybody around the country. And
do the people around him? Do the people around him in the RNC know this? And are they preparing accordingly for the next race?
No, they're not. The Republican Party is not our friend, and I think you knew that. It's the Uniparty, right? They across the country, they're more interested in influence and power than they are in winning elections, as is clearly shown even in the 2024 election. Look at all the down ballot losses all across the country. when Trump won in 2016, he had a much larger majority in the Congress, you'll recall. This time around, he barely eked out a small majority, and history teaches us that whoever wins the presidential, the other party wins the midterms. And I've shown graphs showing the trends heading into the midterms. We're in serious trouble. I think we're going to lose the midterms. And if the Congress goes Democratic in the midterms, you know what the first thing they're going to do?
Impeach Trump. Impeach him.
Trump. So we've got a very small window here to fix it. And the GOP is out there trumpeting, yeah, we saved the country. You know, we need to do the same thing again. Let's go out and harvest ballots. Fat chance, buddy. You're after.
Explain to those who maybe don't know what harvesting ballots means.
So the whole strategy was to make it too big to rig. They were going to go out and register people that are not registered to vote already, and then encourage them to order absentee ballots, and then go knock on their door and collect them. A lot of states that's called harvesting. In a lot of states that's legal, and California is an example of that.
It's legal or illegal?
Legal. It is okay.
In a lot of the states.
A lot of states, it is legal to do that. Some states, it's illegal. And in the states where it's illegal to go collect the ballots, then in those states, what you do is you go knock on the door and say, hey, you know, order your absentee ballot, and I'm going to come nag you to turn it in afterwards. And now in Pennsylvania, most people don't know this because TPUSA is out there bragging how they rescued Pennsylvania, which they didn't. Pennsylvania just went up a tiny bit. If Trump's turnout went up a tiny bit, what happened is the Democrats didn't turn out. The Democrats fell a lot compared to the tiny increase, and still Pennsylvania was barely eked out, just barely eked out. So what really happened in Pennsylvania is Elon Musk lived out there for a month, hired buses to actually bus the Amish people to the polls. You want to know what saved Pennsylvania? That's one thing that saved Pennsylvania. Another thing that saved Pennsylvania is some of the counties, for example, Montgomery County, they did a remarkable job policing every part of the election. They had volunteers basically scrutinizing every single detail. You might remember that in the 2020 election, Montgomery County is where there were 4 Supreme Court cases from. So those people there are awake and engaged. And that's really the solution to fixing our elections, is to get the local citizens engaged. Right now, everybody's kind of apathetic.
Okay, so in the midterms, do they lose the House and the Senate, or one?
Yep.
You think they lose both?
Yes, I think we're in serious trouble.
Do you think? Okay, just so remind everybody, a president can be impeached in the House. They vote. They get, I think it's a 2/3 majority vote, right, to impeach.
I'm not sure. I don't remember that.
Look that up for me, Logan, will you? What percentage do you need in the House to impeach? And then if they get the votes for impeachment, then they go to the Senate for a trial.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to Bill Clinton, if you remember, right?
Yeah.
And he won the trial.
The Monica Lewinsky thing, yeah.
Right. He won the trial in the Senate. So he got impeached, but he wins the trial in the Senate. Do you think they impeach him and then go to trial in the Senate?
I think the opposition to Trump is livid right now and very organized and very active. And they're going to, I mean, what did they do for for most of Trump's first term? They threw anything and everything at him to try to stop him from being successful. And are you kidding? Right now, that guy is in there, he's got his wrecking ball out. It's almost fun watching the news again these days to see the new executive orders that are coming out every week. Mm-hmm. But keep in mind, all those executive orders are temporary, right? They can all be overturned just as fast as Trump is overturning Biden's orders. So, what really has to happen is we need Congress right now to ratchet in the forward movement that President Trump has been giving us. But exactly the opposite is happening. You notice who opposed the budget. His big budget bill, the Republicans in the Congress did. And remember when he was doing the tariff negotiations to pressure other countries, who brought out a bill to try to stop him? The Republicans. Mm-hmm. So I don't think the Republicans are our friends.
And by the way, you only need a simple majority to impeach in the House.
I thought that was the case, but I didn't want to say it. I wasn't sure.
Simple majority. And I'm guessing that's probably the case in the Senate then too, a simple majority.
Yeah. So I think we're in serious trouble.
So you think he could be impeached and then convicted in the Senate?
And they're going to say, oh, he's a felon and he was already convicted in this case. And I mean, it's like they're going to go after him. They got to. They're losing the country otherwise. Now, there's something new this time around. You might remember in I think it was 2018. It could have been 2017, but I think it was 2018. One of his executive orders gave him the authority to overturn an election, to nullify an election.
Well, by the way, it's a 2/3 vote in the Senate to convict.
Good. Okay.
Keep going.
You might remember his executive order gave himself the authority to overturn an election if you could prove foreign interference. He did that. It was one of his executive orders. It's like his 75th executive order, his first term. Well, when Biden took office in 2021, he renewed that executive order, and that order is still in effect. So we could have some pretty interesting times ahead if in the midterms there's funny business. Trump might even just nullify the election. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing to see?
Now, what would that involve?
All he has to do is prove that there's funny business in the election, foreign interference, and he has the executive authority to nullify it.
Because he signed that executive order already, right?
Yeah, it's already in place. And that would enable him to, we'd call it the National Guard and hold a new election. And you already see him going that way, election day being a single day and a national holiday, and we're going to get paper ballots, and, maybe we're going to have purple ink on our thumbs this time around. Who knows?
Are you saying that would go on?
I think we're headed for some interesting times.
You think that would happen in the midterms?
Oh, yeah. Because he's not going to be willing to give up the House with funny business, because then it just basically makes him into a lame duck for the last 2 years, because that'll dominate everything and he won't be able to carry out his agenda.
How concerned are you with a civil war in America?
I think I've been telling people we either need to use our First Amendment rights now and fight the First Amendment war now, or we're going to be fighting the Second Amendment war. That's what I've been saying. And so, I am concerned. I'm very concerned.
Do you have any polls that show, when you have Democrats talking about, eliminating the president, when you have Democrats talking about going after their people and putting them up against a wall, and all the rhetoric we've heard during his first term, and then when he's running, and then the two attempts on his life, and that seemed very funny, like there was inside help on that one, right? Those two.
I would agree that looked very suspicious.
And then the Comey doing what he did last week, others saying the things they're saying. It seems as though the leadership of the Marxists or of the Democrats, it seems as though some in their own leadership. Schumer saying what he did out,
yes,
about the Supreme Court and different things. It seems as though these people really want that. Why else would you be saying those things?
It's a Bezmenov revolution, remember. It's fifth generation warfare. Remember, Yuri Bezmenov defected from Russia.
Right.
And he said that that ideological subversion and creating chaos and creating crises is part of the process for the fifth generation warfare.
Demoralize, destabilize, chaos, and then the new norm.
100%. And that's I think chaos is what they want. I'm traveling the country. You know me now. I've been doing this solid almost every day since we first met back in March of 2021. And I'm telling you, the country is not the country it used to be. I go to these cities like Portland or San Francisco. It's overrun with homeless people. There's crap on the streets. The economies are, this is deliberate. This is not an accident.
So tell me more. Tell me more. This is a fascinating conversation. What else do I need to know? What else does our listening audience need to know?
I think the solution to this problem was right out of Yuri Bezmenov's own mouth. He said the way you fix ideological subversion, he says, is you return to religion.
You teach patriotism.
Yes, absolutely.
He said that. He said teach patriotism.
Yes, and so what's encouraging to me is I see a political revival nationwide. I've given almost 1,000 presentations now across the country, Brandon. I've got a PowerPoint for every one of them, so I can show what I'm doing, and 800 counties. And as I travel the country, I see a political revival happening and a spiritual revival happening. But I don't see the left backing down. I don't see the other side backing down. So what that means is it's going to come to a head. And there's like human nature here that's been a little frustrating for me. Before the election, I had people all over the country all engaged in election reform. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Well, now that Trump's winning, you know, I walk into a state like Missouri and they say, what are you here for, Dr. Frank? Trump won, you know, go away. He's going to fix the country. I'm like, no, you don't understand. You're the government. You got to start acting like the government. If you don't act like the government, Trump's not our savior. We, the people, are the government. America is an experiment in self-government. You have to engage. And if you expect anything that he does to be permanent without you ratcheting it in, I make the analogy. It's sort of like we're in World War II. He's bombing Berlin, which is great, gives us air cover, but we have to occupy Normandy. It takes ground troops. The people have to wake up and engage in order to hold on to any progress we've got coming right now. We're in trouble.
Let's go back to midterms.
Yeah.
What is your polling, if you're doing any, or if you're reading Rasmussen, Mark Mitchell, any of these guys, what is your polling saying as far as the turnout? I know it's early, but the turnout for Republicans. In other words, will there be enough people turn out and enough demoralized Democrats that will be fine? Or are you sensing that the Republicans are becoming complacent and won't really take the midterms that seriously, and the Democrats are ticked off and are going to turn out in huge numbers?
That would be very close to how I would describe it. I projected the trends in every state, and the trends are not towards the Republicans. We barely eked this out. I think God gave us a miracle by keeping Biden alive, so that the Democrats were totally, all they had left was a dud of a candidate. All they needed was a good candidate, and they would have carried the day.
And who do you see that in 2028? Is that AOC? I mean, well, I know that makes you laugh, but that's what people are saying. They kind of see her as the defunct leader of the Democrat Party right now.
Well, the party, I agree. The party has gone so hard to the left. She might be the de facto leader, but really, I think it's not her. I think it's been Obama the whole time. I don't think he's passive. I think he's behind the scenes.
Right, but who's going to be the candidate they put up forward? Who's going to be the face?
Oh boy, I don't know if I'm the right guy to ask, but maybe Newsom. I don't know. Somebody from one of the big states, one of the big people. It's probably going to be Newsom, I'm guessing.
I mean, why else would he be doing that silly podcast and interviewing Republicans and Steve Bannon and people? He's trying to run to the middle, right?
Yes, right. And if he's not a very good guy. But there you go. I'm not a fan.
Tell me in closing, what do you see as a professor, a historian, a Christian, a patriot, someone that tracks trends? What do you see coming for the country?
In the back of my Bible, I have a graph. It covers 400 years of Israel's history, and it shows them falling into idolatry and then repenting and idolatry and repenting over and over again, 12 generations. And it ends in the Babylonian captivity, where Nebuchadnezzar came in and took away for 70 years before they were restored. What I don't know, we're definitely on a downward slope. What I don't know is if we're going to repent fast enough that God will restore us, or whether we're headed for Babylon. And it depends on us, I really think. The Bible says in 2 Chronicles, God says, if my people will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sins and heal their land. Well, that's an if-then proposition. The if has 4 contingencies. If my people will humble themselves, and humbling is recognizing your role and what gifts God is giving you, you're supposed to deploy. Humble themselves and pray, seek his face. You got to talk to God. Hey, God, what is it you want me to do? And then what does it say? And turn from their wicked ways. Well, I don't see us doing that very rapidly, my friend. In fact, I just got on the board of directors for A Piece of Heaven out here in California. It's a new facility we're putting together now to basically nurture sex trafficked children back to health. It's going to be a 250 bed facility. It's a big deal. We're going to be working with these groups that are rescuing kids. Child trafficking is a huge problem in our country. It's becoming larger than the drug problem in terms of business. So
who by the way is sex trafficking these children? How old, and who is sex trafficked? What are their occupations? How old are they?
Are the people the children or the perpetrators?
How old are the children, and then how old are the perpetrators? What's their occupation?
So I'll just answer that question. Let me show you a short experience I had, and it'll answer that question. There's really two kinds of sex trafficking. There's the kind where you import people, say from south of the border, and a lot of those girls are typically 10 to 15 years old. That's what that tends to be. And the cartels are the ones importing them, and the families come in and they're indentured servants. So that's one kind of trafficking, and that's quite prevalent. There's another kind of trafficking that most people aren't even aware of that to me is the really troubling one. And I don't want to give identities away, but I was speaking to a parole officer in a Midwestern state recently, and he has 20 active cases at any given time that he's monitoring in his parole duties. And he says out of his 20 former prisoners that he's monitoring, 18 out of the 20 are child abductors. I said, what do you mean? Why are they out of prison? They abducted children. And he goes, yeah. He says, but they're out on parole now. And I said, well, what's the recidivism rate? And he says 80%. So out of the 20 cases that he was monitoring, 18 of them were former child abductors, and then 14 of them would be repeating. The recidivism rate. They would be repeating that offense. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. That's horrible. We can't. At the minimum, that means 14 kids are going to be abducted in our own country. And he says, yeah, and this is how they do it. A guy in a Midwestern city somewhere will just park his van next to the playground, and mom's out there watching their 2, 3, 4-year-old child, play on the swing, and she's reading a magazine, and the next minute she looks up and her kid isn't there anymore. And that child's been abducted, and that child will never be found again. And he says what's really horrible about it, he says, is 20, 30 years ago, those perverts that would abduct those children, they would take them home and do whatever they were going to do, and then they'd bury them in a forest afterwards. He says, but nowadays, because he has to read the files of all these parolees, so he knows what's going on. He says, nowadays, these guys, they don't dispose of the children after they're done with them. They sell them into the black market. They're worth $5,000 a piece. So when you ask, who are these guys and how are they employed? You know how they're employed? They abduct children for a living. They have their way. When they're tired, they sell the kid for $5,000. If you just did one a month, you'd have a pretty good income. And that is a huge and growing problem in our country because the demand for those children is so high. This is our country, Brandon. This is our country that has a demand like that.
The demand for these children is not because we've imported a bunch of illegals here that are, debased and just it's the demand is from Americans.
Yes.
The demand is from American-born citizens desiring these children.
It's similar to like the drug trade, right? The demand, they wouldn't be importing drugs into America if the demand for those drugs wasn't there. And I didn't talk about the families that they're bringing in that come in as indentured servants. You can hear horror stories after horror stories about those poor girls that are broken in at the border, and the panties in the trees and all that stuff. It's a devastating thing to hear.
And what you're saying is they bring in families, and so you may have a mom with children.
Yes,
she's knowingly sex trafficking her child to pay off her debt or her family's debt.
Yeah, what happens is it'll typically be a family of 4. There'll be a father, a mother, a daughter, and a son, and the cartel will import them into America. But they don't just drop them off in a city and walk away. They've already got jobs. They've got a job for the father. They've got a job for the mother. She's typically in a hotel cleaning rooms or something. And the father and the son, they're on construction or agriculture or something like that. And the young daughter goes into a brothel. And until their $30,000 debt as a group is paid, they all have to stay in whatever job they've been assigned. If any one of the four says, well, I'm done with this, I'm leaving, then the cartel brings in an enforcer and slaughters the whole family. And, that's why when you hear Trump talking about these gang members that he's deporting, a lot of those are the enforcers that are coming up to enforce the will of the cartels, enforce the contracts.
So why is President Trump not telling the story you just told? We should be hearing that story and hearing those stories so the American people understand how it works.
Tell me about it. Well, that's why I'm on the board of this new thing, and I'm out here spreading the word. I got into this, me well. You were there right when I got involved publicly. I was into this for elections, but what strange thing has happened is as I've been traveling the country, guess what I've discovered? That elections are tied to sex trafficking. I can't give away identities, but I was riding in a car with a federal official, and we're driving and we were talking about this problem, and he says, by the way, right over there, it was a federal marshal. He says, right over there, that building over there, there's a brothel in it. And I'm thinking, what? How come I don't know that there's a brothel in my own neighborhood? Okay. I mean, it's like, I don't market that stuff, but I don't purchase that stuff, but there's a brothel that I don't even know. It's like the back end of a strip mall or something. I didn't even know it was there. And so we're talking about that, and I'm kind of marveling at the fact of how naive and uninformed I am. And a few minutes later, he points to the other road, the side of the street. He goes, and that's a brothel over there. I said, wait a minute. You know where all the brothels are. And he's going, yeah, that's my job. He says, I go around and arrest these enforcers and we deport them. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. But if you work for the government and you know where the brothels are, that means law enforcement knows where all the brothels are. Why are they open? He says, it's not that simple. He says, because if you were to close down the brothel, then you've got to actually rescue 80 people, not just the 20 girls in the brothel. You got 80 people because the enforcers are going to come up and slaughter these families. He says, that's the first nuance. The second problem, he says, is law enforcement are customers. And another problem, he says, it goes right up into the legislature. We have judges that have been customers. We got legislators. It's a mess. And this should remind you of the Epstein files. And it should remind you, why don't we have that publicly exposed file? And the answer is because there are a lot of people on that list that are in power, and they don't want that list out. And so when you ask the question, why don't more people know about this? Because heads going to be rolling, and it's going to be pretty ugly.
Have you been able to confirm any of this information here? Report to the governor, racketeering, bribery, corruption, election fraud, how the discovery of mass corruption in the state of Arizona led to the abduction of McKinley Harris Thaler by John Harris Thaler, author of Decline and Fall of California. Are you familiar with this report? I've interviewed him a few times. He gave me the report.
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't read it. I'm sorry. I've been busy, but if you want to send me a link or something, I'll have a look at it. I don't know anybody who's been more places or done more grassroots work than me, and
what I'm getting at is
he also has a lot of stories to tell, and I can probably confirm or just.
Well, then I'm going to send you the report. I'm going to say it's a pretty thick book. He has all the documents in there, and he's apparently he hasn't been sued. That's one of the things I asked him when I saw him a few months ago, and he handed me the report in person. No, I haven't been sued. I'm like, well, that's interesting, because if it wasn't true, you'd think of people knocking your door down with subpoenas and cease and desist letters. But he claims there's a lot of racketeering and bribery going on, and money laundering with deeds and houses and cartels.
Yeah, that's correct. There's a lot of that. Absolutely.
With the cartels.
You asked about Civil War a minute ago, and I think this is another relevant story. I was in Texas a couple years ago, and I was with Phil Waldron. You remember Phil?
Yeah.
He's
former military out of Texas.
Yes, and he's contracting with the government right now, and one of his jobs is he monitors the immigration from Mexico into America. And he told me, he said 25% of the military-age men that are coming across the border from Mexico into the United States are CCP.
What percentage?
And I used to be in academics, and I'm telling you, people that live in China don't just come to America willy-nilly.
What percentage did you just say?
25% of military-age men coming across the border from Mexico into Texas, because that's where he's monitoring
Right.
it, were CCP. Now, when I heard that, that was shocking to me, right? A couple months later, I was in southern Arizona. I was in one of the counties there, and you know me, I meet with election integrity people, and I often meet with sheriffs to discuss things. And so I happened to be with the sheriff there for county on the border, and I said, "Hey, I heard that there's all this immigration going on from Mexico into Texas. Do you see that same problem in your county?" And he said to me, this sheriff, he said, "As a matter of fact, Dr. Frank, last week I deputized 10 of my citizens, and we drove an entire encampment of military-age Chinese men out of one of our local forests." And I'm like, "What? Where did they go?" And he says, "I don't know." He says, they're out of my county now. He says he'd reported it to the federal government. This was before the election in 2024, by the way. He'd reported it to immigration, and they drove them out of their county. He says it's a whole encampment. So, you talk about, is there going to be civil war? There may be other kinds of war. There may be all kinds of interesting things being prepared, being set up right now in our country. I think we have interesting times ahead. I don't tend to be a conspiracy guy, but right now the evidence is overwhelming. We got stuff going on here. We got to wake up and address.
Yeah, well, there's an article I posted today at Worldview Report, dated May 20th, 2025. That's yesterday. U.S. Army medics prepare for war with China. Service is focused on overcoming logistical hurdles and other obstacles now so that medical professionals will be ready if they're needed. Now, I've been reporting on the fact that Pentagon's been getting ready for a war with China for a long time. In 2020, I did a big 1 hour on this, so 5 years ago. But I tell you, I have plenty of reports right now that this Pentagon, Pete Hegseth, is preparing for war with China. I don't think they want it, but they're preparing for it. And the reason they're preparing for it is because China is openly saying they're going to go to war with us. China is preparing their people that they're going to go to war with us. So China's already said, we're going to go to war with the U.S. We'll decide when, or we're going to war. The U.S. is preparing for war. They don't want it under this administration, but they know they have to prepare because they already know China's already announced to the world and their people, they are going to go to war with us, right? So when you see all of these CCP males here, like you just described, that is the gray terror you do before you go to war. And you take out their water and their critical infrastructure and their transportation and communications, which is what Gordon Chang has warned on this show for a couple years now. And he says they're going to do bombings and they're going to poison water treatment plants.
100%.
And he's going to be our speaker this fall. Full details, and you can register for October 3rd and 4th at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. But what you're bringing to us tonight, really, and we got to visit more often here on the air, because what you're bringing to me, Dr. Frank, is compelling because, A, you're a patriot, you're a Christian, you're a professor, you're someone that's used to dealing with hard facts, hard data. Show me the data. I mean, I still have your mug. What's your mug called? Something about the data. Yeah, that's
Follow
it.
the data
Follow
with
the
Dr.
data.
Frank.
So I got one of your mugs, okay? You're all about the data. But you're also providing me with, you're taking the temperature of the American population with your travels, and you're hearing from the elected officials and the intelligence community and the police community, sheriff community in your travels. So everything you're sharing tonight is only affirming what we have been talking about and hearing from other people, be it, Todd Bensman, Michael Yon, Gordon Chang, David Gobbets. You're affirming, as a man who's traveling the country almost nonstop, what our guys are telling us. But you're doing it from your personal experiences of gathering information on the ground.
Yeah, and I confess, if I'd listened to someone like you 10 years ago, I would have said, Brandon, he's a nice guy, he's an honest guy, but I think he's a little out there, a little too conspiratorial for me. I probably would have discounted. But now that I am, I'm awake now, brother.
So let me ask you this. The fact that I've been doing this 35 years, and in my second book, third book in 1995, predicted social credit scores like China, that would come here. I predicted a vaccine tracking system that could be used against political dissidents. I talked about violence in our country that would look like a movie. I mean, what does that say to you if me, I'm just really an average guy who just, is interested in rights and reads and research. I'm not doing anything I don't think anyone else could do if they just committed their life occupation to it. What, based on the fact that 10 years ago you wouldn't have listened to what I've been doing or thought I was crazy, but I've been doing this 35 years with this kind of track record, what does that say to you about the country that we have even people like you that are very knowledgeable that up until recently wouldn't even listen to guys like me? It makes me wonder if we're too late. It's too late.
Yes. That's why I talked about the graph. I don't know if we're getting to this in time or not. I'm impressed by the ability of the media to suppress these kinds of dialogues. It's like you have the conspiracy about Kennedy getting shot by Oswald. Right now, all that stuff's going to come out, and a lot of these conspiracies that were conspiracy wackadoodles are coming true and being found to be true. And even though the facts are coming out, people are still asleep. And I sit down with people all the time, county leaders who are level-headed, who are totally convinced that there's no problem in our elections. And I spend most of my time just showing them, here, I can hack into your election. Here, let's do it right here together, or here's the facts. And we find fraud in their own counties. And it's a slow.
Do they believe it? Process. Do they believe you, or they discount you as a wackadoodle?
I have to have the hard evidence. And, when you and I were working together back in 2021, I was working mostly with statistics. I had some hard evidence, but mostly statistics at that point. Nowadays, we find the actual fraud. We find the people who are dead, but they've been dead for 20 years, but they're voting in every election. That's what we look for. And we find the actual fraud, and we show how it's happening in their system. What then happens is they know it's real, but then they have another problem, and that's that if they take on the establishment, then they lose their jobs. We have a big deal about to happen in Missouri. Denny Hoskins was elected the new Secretary of State there, and he campaigned on single-day elections, paper ballots, hand counting. That's a big deal, and he got elected. I was shocked. And now, and this goes to our discussion, which is why I brought it up. The people are all saying, okay, Denny, we elected you. Now get in there and do it. But you got to realize he doesn't have the power. He has the authority to make the claim, but the legislature in Missouri can just write the law and legislate him out of business. And guess what? You think these legislatures, come on, this is Missouri. You think these places are red? You're wrong. The legislatures are way corrupted. They're way compromised. We don't even have one good legislature in this country. So I think what's happened is we've been degrading for so long. I think for at least for a couple generations now. You've been doing this 35 years. You were awake 35 years ago. I wasn't. Okay. But we've been degrading that entire period of time. Now we're in a position where people they're complacent. They're conditioned. Don't bother me. I've spoken to clerks before who know there's fraud in their election, and they look at me and they say, I'm not going to give up my retirement. I only have 2 more years. Just leave me alone. I'm going to just keep doing the same thing, and then I'm going to retire and take my money.
We hear that the CIA has penetrated every state legislature there is. Everyone, the CIA. Would you agree?
I don't have direct evidence of that, but I'm telling you, my personal experience in every legislature tells me there's serious control mechanisms going on. When I met with the Secretary of State of Louisiana, Kyle Ardoin, a couple of years ago, you might remember that.
I interviewed him.
Yes, and he was going to decertify the machines in that state. And remember, he went under the radar for months rather than decertify. And when he finally came out, after the election in 2022, a group of our citizens that were chasing him down in front of a microphone, essentially, said, hey, Dr. Frank met with you on a Sunday afternoon, and they hacked into you. It wasn't me directly, but indirectly that very day, we hacked into his elections all over his state. and you were going to decertify the elections. How come you didn't do it? And he denied the entire thing. And so we gathered up a bunch of affidavits. We cornered him in his office, and the next day he resigned. So in other words, these people would rather resign than admit to what's going on because they know they're in trouble. There's some huge pressure going on somewhere.
Do you believe the CIA is involved in manipulating elections?
I know for a fact that the elections are being monitored by federal networks in real time. So I don't know for a fact that they're being manipulated in real time. But if you have the ability to monitor in real time, then you also have the ability to manipulate in real time.
Who is the agency, or do you know who's monitoring it in real time?
CISA, which is one of the things Trump got rid of. Yeah, it's funny. I mentioned Kyle Ardoin. When the day I met with him, he says, "Oh no, Dr. Frank, our elections are secure." And I say, "Well, how do you know?" He says, "Check out my new app. I can monitor them in real time on my cell phone." He doesn't even get it, that the fact that he can monitor it in real time means somebody else can monitor it in real time too. I mean, it's a crazy.
But if you had to guess, would you say the NSA or the CIA is involved in manipulating the elections in the U.S., as we have done in other countries?
If I had to bet money, I would bet that they are manipulating elections. If I had to bet money, but I don't have direct evidence that they are doing it, if that makes sense.
But it has to be a very powerful group. And if they weren't doing it, they could stop it if they wanted to.
I have direct evidence, for example, in Pennsylvania, that it was the NGOs that are manipulating the election. We have the logs proving that the non-government organizations were logging into the state registration system.
And adding voters, right?
And adding voters back in. So I have direct evidence of that. So in that case, it wasn't the CIA doing it, it was NGOs. But you might be able to argue that the NGOs were enabled by software provided to them by somebody in the CIA. You could argue that.
Well, we had that going on. We had that going on with Senator Jesse Helms back in like 83, 84, Washington Times, accusing the CIA of providing software down in Central America to help the communists win down there.
100%. No, that's true. I've actually spoken to some of those.
So you know that story to be true?
Yeah. Well, did I eyewitness it? Of course not.
Right, but you know you know about what I'm reporting about.
I do, and I've sat in rooms, in SCIF rooms, talking to some of the engineers, the software engineers. So I have every reason to. I have no reason to doubt the truth of that claim.
So when it lines up with what you're saying, if they were doing that back in the early '80s, and Senator Jesse Helms was screaming about it, then why would the CIA not be doing the same thing with NGOs in 2024, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and what will be 26 and 27 and 28?
Right. And by now they've had decades of practice. When I first met you back in 2020, I just downloaded all the data from Ohio, and I started downloading all the historical data from Ohio because I was very interested in looking at the historical trends so I could find the anomalies to know where to look to find the fraud. And I was unable, because in Ohio, I was unable to download the election data from the 2004 election because of all the election history data we have archived in Ohio, which we have it all. 1 year, everything was expunged. Guess which year that was? 2004. And so, it exposes too much. When we got Tina Peters' backups, why was the state so shook up? State of Colorado so shook up when we got that, because those backups of her systems show that they have modems and they're communicating during the elections. What most people don't realize, though, Brandon, is that that's not the only place I was working. In fact, Lake County, Ohio, just a couple months later, during the spring election in 2021, we had somebody hack into their election during the election. Map out all the networks, all the machines were online in real time and totally manipulatable during the election. We gathered all that evidence. We did this, by the way, at the request of the Lake County officials. So there's nothing illegal about it. And those Lake County officials they wanted to get rid of their Dominion machines. So they asked us to come in and do that. We did that. And then we gave all that information to Frank LaRose, the Secretary of State of Ohio. And he called in the FBI, just like Colorado called in the FBI. Full investigation, no charges, nothing illegal was done. A county official requested a security check on their system. What's wrong with that? We documented everything. We turned it all in. FBI
convicted of abuse of girls. We don't have the exact number of how many girls, but ages between 11 and 15. Many raped with objects, burned, and on and on. Just, I can't even keep reading this myself, just because I was researching it.
Yeah.
Before.
And yet, if you try to talk about this in Europe, you could literally find yourself being arrested. And in fact, you and I probably couldn't go to Europe without potentially being arrested for what we have said and posted online. And that's what our own government's warned us. Our own government has warned us, Americans, be very careful before you go to Europe, because you could find yourself being arrested for what you've posted on social media here in America. That's what their leaders over there have said they're going to do. And our own government in the Trump administration has warned about that. I can't remember who it was, but I reported on it.
Yeah, remember, I've been banned from UK since 2016.
Really?
Yes. Well, when I went to UK originally in 2010, there was a whole 8 hours of, they literally put me in handcuffs, interrogated me, got to a point where I said, either give me my phone call or give me my American passport. I'm going back home. And then finally in 16 is when I was completely blacklisted from entering UK. And then I'm on a potential refusal of entry in Canada since 2017, after I went there to warn people of Motion M103, which is now a law, which was the anti-Islam.
The anti-Islam? So
the anti-Islamophobia.
Yeah, basically, it was a bill that was going to criminalize people speaking truth about Islam, and you were warning about it. You were up there warning about it.
Yes. So after that trip, I'm not technically blacklisted from Canada, but they have said that we might just turn you around and not let you come in. Not that I have any interest of going to UK nor Canada for that matter.
Oh, no, heavens no. No. How about this one at your Substack? When Sharia gets a tax break, Sharia is being funded by the very system it seeks to replace.
Yes. Okay, so this one, again, everything comes back to you, Brandon. You inspire my Substack, right? I don't know when it was, like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, me and you, we were talking, and, we were talking about your foundation and how they're constantly coming after you, auditing you, giving you a hard time, telling you didn't do the forms. And then I heard from another reliable Christian nonprofit that they're facing challenges, they're being audited. And that's what inspired this Substack.
Let me just say what the IRS has done. My accountant hadn't seen anyone in his 30 some odd years do. Somebody inside the IRS, probably in their nonprofit division in Utah, I think is where he says was there's somebody was kept changing the type of organization we are. They kept flipping it between a private charity and a private foundation, or a private charity, a public charity. They just kept flipping it back and forth. So we couldn't get them to quit messing with the paperwork. We finally just said, look, we were filling out paperwork and sending it to you just because we wanted our folks to know and see the paperwork. But here's the bottom line. We don't have to fill out and send you any paperwork because we're a church. We're a church, and I host a Sunday night church service, and we have our own music and Christian music we've produced with my CDs, and we have a theology and a doctrine, and we've developed teaching curriculum. Everything the IRS says makes a church, we are, and by that, we don't have to fill out your 990s anymore. We don't have to send you 990s. We're not filling out 990s because we don't have to. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. So we were only jumping through their hoops just so people could say, oh, look, there's a letter from the IRS. Well, the IRS actually says if you meet these criteria, you're a church, and you don't have to do 990s. And we've talked extensively about with Matt Staver, who's won cases before the Supreme Court, including 9-0. But yeah, somebody inside the IRS was definitely fooling with our file. My accountant said he'd never seen this in his 30 years. And it was somebody that clearly knew apparently what we were doing, what we were saying, and they were just harassing us. And but we got a file, it's documented. And I actually just talked to my attorney last week. I said, when are we finally going to sue the IRS? I mean, and he's like, well, it's very hard to sue the IRS or any of the federal government. I said, yeah, but anything worth doing is hard. I want to sue the IRS. And so we're not done. We haven't, I don't know where that's going to go, but I instructed him again last week, do some homework. We need to sue the IRS. We need to turn these stories into national stories because the IRS is absolutely corrupt to the core. And they got people working in there that I think actually are religious bigots. They are haters of Christians. They're haters of God. And, so that's the background for those who want to know.
Well, you may want to send this Substack to your lawyer. I'll tell you why. One of the things you find out, and you can confirm this, I don't have a 501c3. I have never registered, so I don't know exactly the laws, but I'm pretty sure, first of all, there are certain gag orders, let's call them for lack of better terms. Secondly, there are certain terms that if you cross certain lines, your status shall be revoked. For example, if your charity in any shape or form is involved in funding any kind of terrorism, you will lose your status, correct?
Which I would agree with, yeah.
Okay. Did you know to this day, Boston Mosque that was behind the Boston Marathon bombing still has its 501c3 active?
Wow.
Yes, sir. And the list goes and on and on. I have named every single Islamic charity 501c3 in America that has ties to funding Hamas, being behind terror attacks, preaching openly hate toward Jews and Christians, gays. Every single one of them still have their status, and nobody is even calling them. And that is why I wrote this. We still think there's no double standard. You just said something interesting. You think some of the people who work inside IRS are religion bigots, right?
Religious bigots.
They are not, because they don't mind all the Islamic status out there.
So what they are is just have hatred toward Christians.
Exactly. They got a problem with Christians.
How do we know
that's what I
they're not
point out.
Muslims? How do we know that these aren't Islamists inside those agencies doing this?
I asked that very question. And that's what I point out in conclusion of that Substack. Is this IRS a government chapter that's just doing what they're supposed to do, or have they been infiltrated to purposely go after churches?
Yeah.
Because it seems like that's the case. And that is exactly why a lot of these churches are getting involved with interfaith dialogue, because they don't want to lose their status. They want to keep their 501. Not saying it's a good choice. I'm not defending them, but I'm just saying this is why we see more and more churches getting involved with Islam and Chrislam and interfaith. Because IRS seriously is coming after you, but they're letting Boston Mosque keep their 501c3. I don't think even double standard qualifies here, but for lack of a better term, these double standards need to people need to wake up.
Yeah.
We can't keep going like this.
We have a letter from the IRS to us stating that they made a decision related on a late fee, a penalty. And they sent us a letter saying, oh yeah, we decided to, not worry about that. Then 6 months later, they turn around and send us a letter and say, you owe this money. And my client sends them back a letter saying, here's your letter saying you're not going to charge that late fee or penalty. And they said, yeah, that letter should have never been sent.
But who sent it then?
They did. But the point is, they send you something, then they turn around and say, we should have never sent that letter to start with. So we want to assess you the late fee and penalty that we said you didn't owe in the last letter. We've changed our mind. Wait a minute. You can't put something in writing to us. Tell us, when my attorney wrote them back, because you can actually appeal these things. Say, look, based on his taxes and what he paid and how much and what was going on in the country and COVID and all that, we are asking this. They said, fine, don't worry about it. We're abating that, not a problem. 6 months later, a year later, hey, you owe this. We're like, where'd this come from? What is this? And the accountant finally gets someone on the horn with the IRS. They're like, oh, it's the late fee and penalties adding up. No. That was forgiven. Really? Send us the letter. We send them a letter. They get back and say, oh, that letter should have never been sent. So again, the IRS are so criminal, they can't even keep their contract with the taxpayers when they put it in black and white. They just randomly decide, oh, that should have never been sent. So you're basically saying that you're using the federal mail to lie and just kind of make up the rules as you go. I mean, this is why the IRS has to be abolished. It's not working.
Agreed.
It's not working. It's unconstitutional. And all the money they're collecting.
It's out of control.
All the money they're collecting, they're sending overseas anyway. And if they're not sending it overseas, they're giving it to terrorist groups, terrorist organizations, vasectomies for the Gaza. They're giving it to, National Public Radio, National Public Television, all these groups getting my government money, your government money. There's no reason for it. None of it is going for anything, really. I mean, it isn't. When you look up all the fraud, it is about the equal for everything being collected. In fact, I think I have a video, Annie, on this today. I saw. Here we go. Here, look at what Tim Burchett says. Listen, this is how corrupt it is. Ready? Here we go.
How did terrorists exploit our foreign aid loopholes?
Well, we have a lot of our international.
Can you pull your mic up? I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
You have international NGOs and UN agencies actively lobby here in Washington, D.C. against vetting policies that would prevent it. I was the senior vetting officer at USAID, and what we did.
Did you say United Nations is doing this? The UN?
Sure, everybody who's getting money lobbies here.
That they're lobbying against us. I'm sorry, Mr. Roman.
There's actually someone who used to work for one of those lobbies, the largest NGO lobby, Interaction. One of our co-witnesses here worked for them from 2018 to 2023. USAID effectively self-funds its own external private lobby that then goes back to Congress and asks for more money for USAID.
So the taxpayers fund this lobbyist who's working against American interests.
Correct.
Possibly killing our allies and possibly Americans.
They bring together groups in Washington that overseas work with groups that kill Americans.
Yeah, I don't need a flow chart to show that. I appreciate it. Do you think USAID programs have been aligned with the national security interests of the U.S.?
No, they have not. They have actually helped China.
Mr. Roman?
No.
Okay. How do these programs compromise our national security, Mr. Premack?
They actually push China. They actually push much of the world towards China on the green energy agenda. They push people, ordinary people, billions of people towards China because of the resentment caused by our social reengineering.
Are we being lobbied by these pro-communist China groups currently?
Well, a lot of these countries don't even have to lobby because they get the money anyway, like South Africa.
Yeah, and in fact, these lobbyists have come to the House and have tried to kill legislation like H.R. 160, which was meant to increase transparency in USAID's funding of overseas organizations.
Is that a current piece of legislation?
That's from the last session.
And give me that number again.
H.R. 160.
And what does it do?
It was meant to give U.S. lawmakers the ability to have higher transparency in terror financing investigations aimed at scrutinizing extremist groups.
Mr. Premack?
We had a regulation before we left in the last administration that anybody who touches money in countries where there's terrorists, those names have to go through databases, terrorist databases. That was overturned by Biden.
Oh, wow. Apparently they wanted to fund terrorists with your tax dollars in mind, folks. So every time we pay taxes, you need to understand, folks, this is not going to better the country. It's going to line the pockets of lobbyists, politicians and kickbacks, and terrorists overseas, and communists. We're funding our own
demise.
Yep, 100%. And think about how I could expand my network and all I could do if I wasn't paying the tax rate I am. Because obviously I have two organizations, obviously, my foundation, and then I have what is our network, and our foundation is a sponsor of the network, because that way it gives me the freedom not to be constrained in what I want to say. But can imagine the amount of money that I pay in taxes personally and corporately that I could use to build up the network and grow the network. I have to turn around and give it to the government so they can fund the terrorist groups that we're trying to oppose on the air.
Well, if that happened, then Brennan, they couldn't have all the chaos they have that is created by themselves.
Yep.
Then people, no disrespect to your audiences specifically, but majority of America would be informed. If that ever happened, much more Christians would realize they shouldn't try to coexist all of what you're saying is exactly the opposite of the plan. And I'm not talking about the plan that we're supposed to trust. I'm talking about the real plan that we should always question.
You mean trust the plan, yeah. All right, let's go to the last one here, Annie, on your Substack. And that would be...
Great timing, yes. That would be how we trusted. That's it, we just trusted.
Tell me this one.
This one hurts because, as you know, I think it was on your show. I'm like, I have a crush on Kash Patel because he's the guy I trust. Yeah, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino on Sunday came out live on Fox News, and they said, "We've seen the file. We are qualified to say Epstein killed himself." After 6 years of entire MAGA movement, a slogan of Epstein didn't kill himself, suddenly now FBI realized, no, he actually killed himself. He killed himself. There's no list to release. Nothing to see here. Go home. Literally, that's what happened. We're done. There's no list, and nobody killed him. So case closed. Moving on to next topic.
And Chris Martinson, I guess, who got his PhD, will be a speaker at our fall conference, got his PhD in toxicology and something else and has done autopsies. He said, I know enough to know that you don't end up with the broken bones that he did in his neck from a hanging weight, meaning losing a sheet, I guess, and then your body weight to hang yourself. That doesn't break bones. And so he's like, of course, a very strong man strangled him and broke the bones in his neck, which is consistent with murder, not suicide.
Right. And my point of view is, I mean, I don't have the expertise to make that a statement, but my question is, okay, so for 6 years, well, at least from 2023 until 2024 being 2 years, a huge part of Trump's campaign was this Epstein file, right? It's going to be released day one. We're going to be transparent. Everybody's going to know. We're going to go after the bad guys. We're going to release the list. And then suddenly we're all just supposed to say, hey, if Kash said he killed himself and Dan backed it up, then he killed himself. If that's the truth, show me the proof. Kash Patel said that he read the file, everything in it, and he can say that Epstein killed himself. I would like to see that file myself and make that call for myself.
So what is going on with these
What's the difference? What's the difference between Biden administration and Trump right now when it comes to Epstein file? Seriously, what is it? They said, we saw it, we approved, it was a suicide. Kash Patel just did the same thing. And it genuinely hurts for me to say his name and compare him to Biden administration because I had high hopes for this guy.
And I can't remember who it was, but someone wrote and said, what these guys are doing is relying on the Biden FBI to tell them what to believe.
No, Kash, on that interview on Fox News, Kash Patel said he has seen the case and he has read it. And with his background, he can say the guy killed himself.
But the case would have been prepared by the Biden regime. So if he's reviewing the case, unless he starts from ground one, day one, he's reading the reports of a corrupted FBI.
Well, then why is he not starting from day one?
Well, that's a good question. And why do you think Bongino, because Bongino, unlike Kash was a little more reserved. Bongino is known for his expletive-laced rants, right? And you take all of his expletive-laced rants of Bongino when he was a podcaster, and then you put them on top of him now as assistant FBI director, those are two different people. What happened?
It's funny. It's funny you say that because on that Substack, I used few of exact sentences that he said when he would go on this like fired up rant of Biden FBI is covering up for rapists and da-da-da-da-da. I use those. I'm like, what happened to that Dan Bongino? Because if you watch that interview, he's sitting there in a very awkward suit that does not suit him at all, saying, no, you know a suicide when you see a suicide. The guy killed himself.
So I know it's just speculation on your part, but what do you think happened?
They became politicians.
To what end, though? Why would a guy, he had to be making $1 million a year. I mean, Dan Bongino had, I would think, to be making $1 million a year, or several hundred thousand a year, based on the rating of his podcast.
Yes.
Logan's telling me in my ear several million. Based on the rating of his podcast,
Yes.
he had to be making several million. So why would you walk away from several million to go to the FBI and make what? 175,000 a year? Why would you do that and then fold like a cheap shirt?
I would say, do you remember when AOC was elected to Congress, right after she was done being a bartender? Apparently she didn't own anything and she was broke and she didn't even have the money to get to work the first day of her job as a congresswoman. She's, I believe, worth over $27 million now.
Really?
Being a politician, there is no income that you won't walk away from to become a politician, because when you're a politician, you got, name them, deep state, CARE, China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they're all funding you. Who can beat their millions, Brennan? It doesn't matter how much Dan Bongino made or Cash Patel made. I mean, how long are they going to be broadcast, or how many topics are going to sit there and scream over when they can actually, and by the way, remember, there are two parts into being a politician. There's the money and then there's the power. Someone like Dan Bongino, the man loves power. Like, if ego had a face, it would be Dan Bongino. You give that guy the title of assistant director of FBI, he'll take it. And then he'll keep the position. He's going to say whatever it takes to stay in that seat.
Well, if you look up her net worth, it's kind of all over the place. But here's one. This is Newsweek. The Democrat in New York, from New York.
Oh, it has gone even up. The last time I checked was 27 million.
Yeah, 30. She denies she's worth 30 million.
30 million.
Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But I guarantee you, she's not broke.
Oh, absolutely no. I mean, and AOC isn't the only one. I just pick her because I love picking on her. I mean, the list goes on.
Yeah, and on, and on.
And on. And now we can sadly add Cash Patel and Dan Bongino to that. Just wait 2-3 years from today and see what they're worth.
Yeah, wait to see what they're worth. I would like to see that. And I'd also like to see what job will they take. And maybe that's what it's about for them. Maybe it's about resume and then writing a book and book deals and speaking and getting on corporate boards and whatnot. But I don't know how anyone, I told Logan there, who's going to listen to Dan Bongino? If he doesn't actually do something, who is going to ever listen to him? He won't be able to return and have an audience. Nobody's going to, anybody with a brain or wherewithal is not going to listen to him because they're like, you had your chance. You're a blowhard. You had this, sat there with your tight shirts on, super, super tight shirts on your show, showing off your biceps, talking big, profanity-laced rants. Then you got the chance to actually do something, and you caved like a cheap shirt. So if his record doesn't change, then who is going to listen to him on a podcast in the future? He only has, in my opinion, left would be to what? Go sit on boards, be a consultant. I mean, I don't know what's left. Again, I don't understand why you would leave. I mean, if they had come to me and said, Brandon, we want to have you come into the Trump administration to do X, Y, and Z, I've already said I wouldn't have gone in there because I like my job too much. It's taken me 35 years to build this. Why would I walk away from this to go do that, even for a temporary time, not to mention all the headaches? And yet, I wouldn't be walking away from what Bongino had. I just can't figure out why a guy would walk away from that. Given that I'm going to try to believe and want to believe that there's nothing, funny going on dollar-wise. It's just from a common sense standpoint, unless you thought you were going to save the country and really do something, why would you leave? And apparently they're not going to do anything to right the ship. I mean, I want to give them whatever time they need, another 6 months or whatever. But if I had to go based on what I'm seeing right now, try to convince me that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself when the autopsy, according to what I've read from Chris Martinson, who I personally know, who has a PhD in this field is saying that's not even possible. It's not even physically possible to break your own necks, your own neck bones in your neck with that type of hanging. I mean, one thing if you put a rope around your neck and jumped off a building and jerked your neck like that, yeah, I guess you break your neck and break your bones, yeah. But use
here's another thing we can look at and say, I don't think they're going to do anything. So we had a series of FBI whistleblowers coming out during Biden administration, Steve Friend, Kyle Seraphin, and many more. Where are they? How come Kash Patel or Dan haven't called them yet and say, hey, come on in. We need good people like you again.
Very good points. It's all over there. Just saying. It's all over there. liveuptofreedom.substack.com. liveuptofreedom.substack.com. As always, thank you, Annie.
My pleasure. Thank you, Brandon. Be safe.
Annie from Iran. Good job. Doesn't sound as good. Iran sounds so much better than Iran.
I will say that Iran does sound better, especially when you talk about me.
You did run from Iran, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I did.
Thank you, Annie.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brandon.
All right, before we go to Senator Bob Hall and Dave Tice, look, Numi, I swish with this every day. Numi, it's loaded with what's called glutathione. That detoxes your cells. The incoming Surgeon General, she gave that speech talking about all the toxins in the air, the soil, it's forever chemicals. They're everywhere. You cannot avoid it, folks, in this world we live in. You can limit a lot of it, but you can't completely avoid it. Detox your cells. You swish with this for about 3 minutes. Within 90 seconds, glutathione, an all-natural occurring molecule in your body, is in your bloodstream. Some studies show that glutathione may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Check it out, swishforlife.com, swishforlife.com. They have a special neuro that deals with your neurological health as well. In fact, I think this one is endorsed by the Brain Council of the U.S. Let's see, I think there's a little write-up. Yeah, American Brain Council. Supports brain health and cognitive function through a powerful blend of ingredients, so you can check that out as well, neuro. It's all at swishforlife.com, swishforlife.com. Detox your cells, okay? Detox your cells. Feed your cells with Gatatana. Detox your cells with Swish for Life. The 3 things I do every day, my Gatatana, my Numi, and my Bella Grace. Swishforlife.com. Highly recommend it, folks. I hope you'll do it. The power of 3. Swishforlife.com. Joining me now is Senator Bob Hall of Texas and, well, another guy who has been warning for some time about EMP. He worked with my friend, the late Dr. Peter Pry, and that would be David Ice. Gentlemen, welcome back to Brandon House Live. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having us back. Good to see you again.
David, you too, Senator. David reached out to me yesterday, shared some great news. So, David, you're responsible for this little get-together. Explain what you texted me yesterday. Go ahead and sing the praises of our friend here, Senator Bob Hall, a little bit, will you?
Well, Senator Bob Hall is an amazing patriot. He's been working for exactly a decade trying to get grid legislation passed in the state of Texas. Unfortunately, due to powers that be, prevented any legislation being passed in 4 prior sessions. But it looks like we have just passed both sessions, the Senate and the House. I'll let Senator Bob Hall talk a little bit more about those details. But it looks like we're going to have passage of a phenomenal piece of grid legislation, better protecting the Texas power grid.
Tell me about the legislation, Senator Hall.
Well, he's right. We've been working on this since I got here in 2015.
It was interesting because when I first arrived at the Texas legislature, I'd never been in elected office before, and I came down here to do great things fast. But I soon discovered that there was nobody in the legislature who could even spell EMP, and so we had an uphill battle educating folks on what the threat was and why it was so important that we do something about it. And each year we would get a bill out of the Senate, but it would always die in the House. Well, this session, due to a number of other factors that happened, that we finally got the governor's attention, and he put out a general order based on a bill we did get passed in the previous session to take a look at our critical infrastructures and see what needed to be done to protect them in the event of adverse activity of some kind. And so, there are 15 of them, and that it was assigned to our emergency management folks who, the concept was they're going to have to do something in the event that we have a disaster of some kind. They've kind of got the lead in cleaning up the mess. And so he gave them the chore of looking into it. And the first thing they came back with was we need to address the electric grid as being the number one of our critical infrastructure that needed to be addressed. And that fit with his executive order he put out. And so they went to work laying out that it needed to be done. And that report was published just before we came back into session in January. And so our bill, it was very closely coupled to what we'd been proposing needed to be done to protect the electrical grid. And for those that are unaware, Texas is the only state in the United States that actually has its own electric grid. It's not coupled with the rest of the country. It is totally independent with Texas. There's a few places that have interconnect with other states, but the bulk, at least 85% of Texas is under what's called ERCOT, which is the Texas Electrical Grid. We're not part of the federal network under NERC or FERC. And so we looked at what could we do to protect it. And so what our bill does is it launches the process of looking to determine what needs to be done, when it could be done, and what it's going to cost, and so on, to actually get the process started to protect our electrical grid, with the idea being that whatever we develop for the electric grid will be scalable to be used by industry and businesses and residential folks to protect their assets.
So in other words, you've created a template that can be duplicated in my state of Tennessee or any of the other states represented by our viewers tonight. Is that right, Senator?
Yes, it can be used, but with other states, like your state, you're going to have to be working in conjunction with other states. Tennessee won't be able to do it by themselves because they're part of the Eastern network. And so you're tied across state lines as energy is produced and travels back and forth. So it's going to take a cooperative effort. There's a lot you can do locally, but to really get to full protection, it's going to take the cooperation of other states working with you.
What does the protection of the grid, and I want Senator to respond to this too, but David, what does the protection of the grid look like also when it comes to these power substations? We have a power substation in our town that, almost all of us drive by it frequently. And an elected official in my town said to me last year, that substation, power substation, and he mentioned right where it was, a landmarker. Like, yeah, I know right where that is. He said, do you realize that runs the whole town? I said, really? I didn't know if we had 2 or 3 of those. He said, no, that runs the whole town. You take that one down, whole town's down. There's virtually no security. And my question to you, David, is not only do we need to harden the grid, but these power substations are just so vulnerable. What are your thoughts?
Exactly right, Brandon. There's more than 55,000 substations. And if you drive around your subdivision, you'll find them protected only by chain link fence.
That's right.
As we talked about in our movie, Grid Down, Power Up, that is really helped to start a movement to get informed citizens, and I call us grid warriors, to be able to rise up and tell our legislators, regulators, board of directors of our public utilities that we've got to better protect our substations. And we're very concerned about the transformers because these transformers are largely made overseas. There's more than 500 that have been manufactured in China. If these transformers go out, it could take 4 to 5 years to replace them. And therefore, as you said, if our substations go out, suddenly we don't have power coming to our individual residences, our municipal water systems will go out, our wastewater systems will go out, which will lead to massive disease. And the EMP Commission found that operated at the behest of Congress for more than 17 years, as many as 90% of American citizens could die if the power goes out on a nationwide basis for an extended period of time.
Wow. So what do you make of that? Surely that's on your radar too, Senator, right? The vulnerability of these power substations?
Oh, absolutely. That's all part of it. That's one of the major elements. Matter of fact, the good news is that we have one of our power companies here in Texas that a couple of years ago had a real enterprising engineer that told management, he says, I think I know how to design a hardened substation. And so they turned him loose, and by golly, he did it.
What did he do? What did he do?
Well, he used new technology, and he designed it understanding the threat, the E1, E2, and E3 pulse from an EMP, and looked at new technology, and he actually came up with a design that was a significant reduction in the physical size of the substation, which made it easier to harden, but also a significant reduction in the cost. His unit only costs 1/4 of what a current substation doing the same job would cost that's not hardened, and it's in production now with Siemens. They're manufacturing them.
Wow. So you also agreed that it's not only EMP, but any of these illegal aliens that are invaders, I should say, they're still here doing physical attacks to a power substation, or some of the anarchists, the communist groups. I mean, is anyone showing designs of how to physically harden these power substations?
Well, this substation is small enough that you could very well put it inside a hardened facility, a concrete structure. We're talking about something that has reduced what would normally be in a room that's probably a good 12 by 18 feet. That's about the size of 2 telephone booths.
Really?
Or less. And so, yes. And the key was moving to fiber optics in controls, which gives you, they're just pretty much impervious to the EMP, but also significant reduction in size and cost and weight.
Yes, yes. David, where is President Trump on hardening the grid? I know he's introduced a big deal for the Golden Dome. In fact, here we go. Let me play this right here. Here he is talking about the dome, which I believe in. Here we go. Look at this.
Mr. President, add this to the long and growing list of promises made and promises kept. Ultimately, this right here, the Golden Dome for America, is game changer. It's a generational investment in the security of America and Americans. Mr. President, you said we're going to secure our southern border and get 100% operational control after the previous administration allowed an invasion of people into our country. President Reagan 40 years ago cast the vision for it. The technology wasn't there. Now it is, and you're following through to say we will protect the homeland from cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, drones, whether they're conventional or nuclear. It's not lost on me, sir, also that you had the vision to start the Space Force. And here we are, when the others said we didn't need it, here we are in the Oval Office with one of the leaders of the Space Force in General Gutlein leading the charge on putting in place a game-changing Golden Dome for America. So,
okay, great. And I'm all for it. I'm sure you gentlemen are. If you're not, feel free to say otherwise, but I'm all for it. But is there an EMP component to this dome force, Senator?
I don't know enough about what they're planning on doing. It sounds to me pretty much like it's a version of the Iron Dome that's been deployed with the Israelis to stop incoming missiles. That would be counter for some of the attack modes, but there are other methods of delivery. High altitude aircraft and weather balloons could be launched from the ground. Not quite as effective as something that would be detonated, say, 250 nautical miles above Kansas, but you get it up near the top of the atmosphere and get 2 or 3 of them across the country, and you've got the same effect as you'd have with one big one, a little bit higher. So it will help, but it's not going to solve all of the problem.
David?
So, as Senator Hall pointed out, really, this is missile defense. And we are very concerned in this movement about critical civilian infrastructure and our substations being taken out by, we talk in our film, 4 threat vectors: physical attack, EMP, electromagnetic pulse, geomagnetic disturbance, which is essentially natural EMP coming from the sun, and then cyber attack. And really, this Golden Dome is protecting against missiles, is not protecting against any of that. And we are worried about our critical civilian infrastructure being taken out by either adversaries or, as you mentioned, terrorist groups, et cetera, that would just go after without firing a shot. Because what an EMP is a detonation of a nuclear blast in the atmosphere. Nobody is directly killed except for the electricity going out.
Senator, name your bill again, and when is it set to be signed by Governor Abbott?
Well, it's Senate Bill 75. It was just passed on 3rd reading from the House today with an amendment. It'll have to come back to the Senate where I'll accept the amendment because it was one I sent over to the House for them to add to the bill. It was a separate bill that added what we call a tabletop exercise, which will allow our folks to be able to do a simulated evaluation of various scenarios of what we do to harden it. It was suggested by our Governor Abbott that we would add that to it. And so,
would the public be able to watch that?
They'll probably get the results of it. They probably won't be able to watch. It's like as we go through this, there'll be a lot of what we will discover and what we'll be planning on doing that will not want to be highly publicized,
right,
for purposes of national defense in there. But as soon as that bill comes over, we will accept the modification to it, and then it will go to the governor. So we're probably a week to 10 days away from him signing the bill. But he's been participating in this all along. It's something he's been very supportive of. Couldn't have done it without his full support and working with his team to get what he needs in there so that we can have a meaningful effort of moving forward to define what we need to do to protect our electric grid. And he recognizes that how important electricity is. Most people don't stop and think about that issue, but it is the second most important thing to sustaining life. You'll live longer without food and water than you will without electricity. And the only thing more important than electricity is air. That's it. Next comes electricity, because without electricity, folks won't get water for very long. You won't get fuel. You won't get anything delivered. The cars won't run. Planes won't fly. There'll be no communications, no telephones, no TV. We will be back to the 1800s in our society, in something that will be non-fixable in our lifetime, because we would not have either the spare parts or the ability to move the equipment.
So an EMP would be unrecoverable.
That is correct. Today, And we had the power companies admit that in one of our previous hearings when we asked them, well, if we had an EMP today, would we be able to recover? And the answer was no, we will not. And that's the same thing the White House Commission on EMP study that David mentioned a while ago that came to the conclusion that one EMP would result in about 90% of the population dying within the first 11 months, because most people do not know how to plant tomatoes and potatoes and don't have cows and pigs in their backyard or chickens even. And so they'd be left with what they have in their basement refrigerator because there'd be no more delivery.
You know, what about if they just took down the Northeast grid and left up Texas and then the West Coast grid? Think about all that population flooding west. I mean, again, if our enemies are looking to damage us, sure, take the whole thing down. But what if there was a psychological narrative or psychological component that our enemies wanted us, the American people, to watch a playing out of massive suffering that the country's never seen probably since the Civil War, and being our population so much larger. Take down the Western grid or just take down the Eastern grid and then watch what the population does and let our enemies know that whatever television's up and communications are up on that section of the country is going to be able to watch the devastation on that side as they move into the side that does have electricity. Has anyone ever thought about that as far as a psychological warfare and actually a suffering? Because then you're preserving the grid. So if China wants to come in and occupy, they haven't taken down the whole grid. Or what if they just decide to take down Texas and then watch Texas run into the East Coast or West Coast, and then they're still preserving the two biggest grids? Because we do have a speech from a Chinese general who said they want to physically take custody and wipe out 2/3 of the American people and keep 1/3 to be the servants of the superior race. That's a documented speech that Gordon Chang and many others have validated on my broadcast. So has there been a contingency for taking down one of the three grids only for the reasons I mentioned?
Well, we have no real contingency for any kind of an EMP attack. That is something that has been put off as, well, that's just probably not going to happen. But any combination that you're talking about, it could very well be a failed attempt to take down the entire grid that results in a partial takedown of it. There's any combination is possible. And as you know from having watched wars and battles, very seldom do any of them ever come out like they planned from the very beginning, but they do a great deal of damage. So, and we're vulnerable. I mean, just take a look at how bad we suffered here in Texas a couple of years ago when we had Winter Storm Uri that took a part of our grid down. And in just a couple of days, we had over 200 people that were dead. And it came very close to being a whole lot worse than that. And because we find ourselves in a very, very vulnerable position. The environmentalists have just about destroyed our capability from an electric power generation standpoint. They've forced us to shut down about 36 coal-fired plants, and then they have swamped our state with unreliable energy sources of wind and solar that will be gone, very quickly in any kind of a disaster. So we're in a very, very vulnerable position, and just barely right now have enough electric power to meet the needs of the people. And as things grow and the demand with some of the industries, AI and others that have a huge energy demand, we are going to have to find a way to actually produce more, and hopefully we will do all of that new production with hardened units and not with unreliable wind and solar or batteries.
Let me have you mention before we go first let me answer this. Is anyone talking to President Trump about hardening the entire grid? Is that even I mean, I know that was in his first 100 days speech, the first term. Is that anywhere on this second term, David?
So let me weigh in on that. 2019, President Trump passed an executive order talking about protecting the grid against EMP and GMD, natural EMP. That was codified into law in the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act. But unfortunately, once Biden came in, there were a number of delegations that went to the agencies, DOE, DHS, et cetera. And unfortunately, there's stagnation inside those agencies. And so I have not heard anything specific that President Trump has talked about relative to those prior actions, but hopefully something is working behind the scenes.
All right, in closing, Senator, what about your gambling bill? Remember we had you on here talking about what looks to be some major organized crime with your Texas lottery. Where are we at with that?
Well, we've got, we have, since I talked to you last, we've uncovered even more criminal activities associated with what was going on with our lottery. We found that we absolutely have a major organized crime syndicate that was operating within the Texas government. We've taken some steps to shut down the couriers, which were a major contributor to it. And I had a bill that would have ended the lottery because and that's what I would like to see happen, because I see no way to clean up their act and have them continue. Besides, the government has no business being in the gambling business. Gambling is just a magnet for a culture of corruption. So we have no business. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, it brings in about $3 billion a year that is used for our schools, our veterans, and a couple other things. And we're at a point in the budget for the next 2 years that that money is needed to continue operating the government. So we're going to have a bill that will tighten up operations, move them to a new organization, and proceed for the next 2 years till we come back under close scrutiny and a lot of bright lights being shined on what they're doing. And then we'll go through what we call the sunset process when we come back into session in 2027. So we're on our way to doing that. Our lottery bill is now over in the House to do what I just described, to move them, tighten up on them, watch them closely, give them a termination date in 2027, but require them to go through sunset. And at that time, hopefully, we'll go ahead and finish the process and shut it down and get Texas out of the gambling business.
Good. I think the Lord will be pleased with that. I think Texas could see some divine blessing from that, because the Bible makes it very clear God hates it when we exploit the poor. And
and just if I could, that's one of the things we most recently found is their lottery, when it was first created in 92, it was the alternative for school funding to increasing the sales tax. They were going to increase the sales tax to raise the money for schools. And there was a great opposition to that, because we know sales tax is very regressive. The poor pay an extraordinary amount of the sales of the tax when that happens. So they said, let's do the lottery. And that will be a voluntary tax, and it will be spread among everybody, because everybody's going to gamble. Well, now that we've been doing it for a while, that's not the case.
Of course it's not.
We've done an analysis, and the affluent neighborhoods like Highland Park in Dallas sell almost no lottery tickets. But you go to South Dallas, and they sell a ton of lottery tickets. So this is the lottery is even more regressive than a sales tax.
That's right.
It's an unnecessary burden on the poor.
It's an exploitation of the poor, and maybe God will bless Texas even more than you already have been by getting rid of this, and maybe other states should follow example. So Two bills by Senator Bob Hall of Texas that states should follow. Protecting your grid, working with other states like Tennessee's going to have to because Texas is its own grid. So you guys are blessed there. But it's a template, and then getting rid of your lotteries. David, give your website, please.
So it's griddownpowerup.com. Please go to, we have the participate tab in the top right-hand corner where you can write emails and sign petitions, make phone calls to your legislators, regulators, members of board of directors, become a grid warrior. Please sign up, help work your states. I cannot thank Senator Bob Hall for his amazing patriotism over this last decade, what he's done for the nation in starting this ball rolling in terms of grid protection.
Indeed. And Senator, yours is what, SenatorBobHall.com?
That's correct. Yeah, SenatorBobHall.com.
Appreciate it. Appreciate both you gentlemen. Thank you, guys.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, God bless you, and you keep up the good work.
Thank you, Senator. You as well. And David, you as well. And congratulations on your bill. We look forward to seeing the video of the governor signing it. We'll show it here when he does.
All right.
Senator Bob Hall and David Tice checking in tonight here on Brandon House Live. Thankful for both those guys, aren't you? All right, folks, earlier in the program, I showed you Dr. Peter McCullough testifying for the Senate. He's with the Wellness Company, and they have a great health plan. Please consider going to worldviewhealthcare.com. This is Dr. Thorpe as well. Worldviewhealthcare.com. Check out their various wealth care plans, like one gives you free prescriptions, one gives you free prescriptions and free supplements. Won't be long before that $99 is more than paid for with all the free prescriptions and free supplements. You can find out about their products, the Wellness Company, okay? That kit right there. I cannot tell you how many times I've had to get into that kit since we've had them the last 3 years and use ivermectin or a Z-Pack. We traveled with it to DC for 8 days. We take that with us wherever we travel. Whenever we go somewhere, we bring that with us. You want to have these meds on hand. If there is any kind of disruption in the country or disruption in pharmaceuticals, if we go to war with China, you're going to want to have this stuff on hand. So check it all out at worldviewhealthcare.com, worldviewhealthcare.com, okay? And let's see, what else do we have real quick before we call it a night? I thought there was something else I was going to mention. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. I do want to mention these, though. Get your pack. Get your pack of 20 business cards for free and send them to family and friends. Send them out to family and friends and use these, all right? For you to pass out. Send them to family and friends, a waiter, a waitress, and promote our network. They're free at worldviewstore.com. The pack of 20, absolutely free, worldviewstore.com. I do want to mention one other thing real quick, and that's our vault, where we have 35 years of radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks, documentaries, so many things there at worldviewtube.com/vault. It's a library of just really amazing stuff. I go through there sometimes, I can't believe the richness of this library. But folks, it's about to get even better, because around the middle of June is when I am told we are then going to open up for you to be able to go in and use our massive, super powerful supercomputer AI that we've been working on for 6+ months. That has transcribed every radio show. It has transcribed every TV show. It has transcribed every Sunday night church service I've done. It's transcribed every documentary I've done. And you're going to be able to start finding stuff so fast to answer the questions of your family, your friends, your kids, your grandkids. Use it for your own Bible study, your own personal enrichment. And by the way, that's the middle of June, and that's going to be the beginning. And then it's going to get better. Then you're going to be able to actually have it tell you the answer to your question in my voice. Yeah. And then it's going to find clips for you. So like if you wanted to show someone a clip, well, I can't remember where it was, but Jimmy D. Young used to said this once or taught this, or John Whitcomb, or whoever it is. our powerful AI will go find it for you and show you exactly where that clip is and then play it. It's powerful. That's going to be a part of your membership. So I think it's already worth the price it is now, but it's only going to get better. So please consider joining, because this is a big part of our general operating budget as well. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. All right, roll the music. Let's call it a night. Appreciate you guys being here each and every night, telling your family and friends. And thank you for your support. We are a listener-supported network. Whether you use the products that we offer, which we use as well, or through our foundation. Collectively, between all of these different ways, we got to bring in $40,000 a month to keep it all going. And as I always say, that does not include my salary, and I got to make a salary too. That's just what I got to raise. I always tell the guys, isn't it interesting how you guys all get paid first? But anybody that runs an organization knows that's right. You take care of your people, and your people take care of you, right? But I got to bring in 40 grand a month. Our bandwidth bill and storage of these digital files is like $8,000 a month just there, not to mention all the other costs. So please don't forget about us at worldviewfoundation.com. And thank you to those of you that are supporting us. We appreciate it so much. Thank you for your trust. May God save America. Take care.
You are watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
And welcome. Glad you guys are with us today. What is the day? The 21st of May, 2025? All right, glad you're with us. I'm glad not to be profusely bleeding all over the news desks today. And thank you to all of you that sent all your home remedies for stopping that. But trust me, we tried everything before we went on the air. But it finally clotted, so we're good. Logan thought it was funny. I don't know. I didn't think it was funny. I was very frustrated. But anyway, we're past it, so let's move on, right? Hey, let me ask you a question. Has modern church worship, modern church music raised a generation of narcissistic wimps? Is that a fair question? Has the modern music of the American church raised a generation of narcissistic wimps? I would say yes. And one reason I say this is because I have stood there, I'm sure like many of you, and particularly men, and thought to myself, this is so degrading. This is so unmasculine to stand here and sing these girly songs, these songs based on emotion and feelings. They're not songs of a warrior. I love songs like A Mighty Fortress Is Our God, Onward Christian Soldiers. I guess that would be considered too militant for most people today, right? But we're left with these milquetoast, shallow, feminized songs. And I, when I did go to these local, quote, churches, I would stand around and I would watch. And most of the men, you could tell, were extremely uncomfortable and were just waiting for it to be over. Right? I was. And no wonder the modern church is largely a turnoff to the average red-blooded, patriotic American male. It really is. The average American church, quote church, is a major turnoff to the average red-blooded American patriotic male. Because so much of it is based on manipulation, and men know when they're being manipulated, particularly if they have children. I think most women know that too. They know they're being manipulated. They know that this is a process of group think, very much like some cult would do, to get a desired emotional reaction, one where you do not question the agenda of said, quote, church, end quote, right? It's almost like mantras. We call them 7-11 songs, 7 words repeated 11 times, like a mantra. And I venture to guess when I open the phone lines, there'll be many men that agree. Skinny jean wearing, I don't know if they do that anymore, but at one time they did. Skinny jean wearing worship leaders, who many of them just seem a little effeminate, frankly. This is not what most of us that are 56 plus years old, that's me and many of you,